Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to round 17 and 18 of the Skip Barber Challenge Trophy for 2023, as brought to you by Gone Skipping Racing on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. This series, of course, sponsored by Musical Money, is the series that is a celebration of the Skip Barber Formula 2000 machine and aims to keep the beloved Skippy alive through 24 rounds of action-packed racing. Heading around the globe, venturing from the United States to Australia and across continental Europe. Today we find ourselves in continental Europe and in particular at the German circuit of the one and only Nürburgring Gesamtstrecke. Also known as the Nürburgring Combined, it is the circuit that brings together the more modernised GP loop or the Grand Prix Strecke and the old-time favourite or perhaps disliked circuit, depending on your preference, of the Nordschleife loop, also known as the Green Hell, and merges it together for the ultimate endurance layout. Indeed, host on an annual basis to the Nürburgring 24-hour race, this is a circuit that puts the ultimate aspects of driving ability to the test. With over 100 corners, 15 miles of acreage when it comes to tarmac and everything in between, there's no type of corner this circuit does not have, as it runs from the base of the Eifel mountains, up through them, over the top of them, and down them once again. And for our drivers, they're going to look to do everything right today if they want to come away with major championship points. And with this championship now making its way into its final third, the points could not become more pivotal as our drivers make their way around the circuit today looking for the big score. But as they get set and ready to go racing, our schedule for today at times in British Summer Time, that's BST, or Universal Coordinated Time +1 at UTC +1, is as follows. And right now we are already in qualifying. Qualifying is underway, with the session being extended to 55 minutes, having kicked off at what was 25 to 8 this evening. And the reason for that is, with the lap times around here expected to be in the periphery or the ballpark of approximately 10 minutes, our drivers are being allotted at least 2 extended laps to be able to set their best possible times, if not more. And after that, we'll go into our races. And for today, our races are not time-bound, they are lap-bound. Again, due to the length of the circuit, and when kilometres, of course, there you can see the precise number at 25.16 kilometres in length. Therefore, having a timer on the races would be a little bit of a curtailing of the potential racing action. So instead, we have 3 laps for our opening sprint race, expected to kick off at approximately 8:30 this evening, and then straight after the sprint race we'll take a brief breather before return at approximately what will be 9:10 for the gridding process for the feature race, which will be 4 laps. Now there's only 1 lap difference, but with that lap difference, of course, it changes the complexity of the racing, because our feature race, of course, expected to mandate a pit stop, and therefore our drivers, the first race is going to be all about keeping it on track and not making a single mistake, whereas the second one is not just about staying on track, but it's also about timing that pit stop to perfection. But an absolutely action-packed schedule for today. This broadcast is being brought to you live via the official broadcast channel, and that is TX151 at TX or Paul Walsh on YouTube. And who is the aforementioned individual? Will allow me to introduce myself. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX151 or Brit of the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And I'll be bringing you all your racing action today, and indeed for the entirety of the season. And indeed, we've all been looking forward to this one. I've heard many drivers down in the paddock absolutely wheating their appetite at the thought of taking on the Nürburgring. Indeed, a number of you talking about last week in the run at the end of the show, just about how important this one would be. Indeed, a lot of our drivers are very excited for it. And as we look to our calendar in terms of what we covered thus far, what lies today and what still lies ahead in our way, we can see is the 12th of May, and we're on rounds 17 and 18 in Germany at the Nürburgring Gesamtstrecke. Now, we started off all the way back in rounds 1 and 2 at the Charlotte Roval in the state of North Carolina in the US of A, and on the 17th of March there, we got to see quite the spectacle in terms of the battling as our drivers really tried to establish a foothold in terms of the start of their championship campaigns. We then continued the theme of the US of A, albeit we made our way from what's the state of North Carolina to instead Sebring in Florida, and then in rounds 3 and 4 we saw our drivers take to task the old Airfield Army base and really put on a great show, and the battling around the circuit there at Sebring carried on what we love to see back on the 17th of March, and that was on the 24th of March. We then made our way to Australia for the first time this season, and for none other than the Bathurst circuit, also known as the Mount Panorama Raceway, and that was in rounds 5 and 6, while drivers made their way up and down the mountain of Mount Waulu, and indeed by charging up and down the mountain, they got their first experience of what it'd be like to run around a very tight and narrow circuit over the mountain section in particular, and in a way you could say it's been a bit of a precursor to what we're expecting today, and that was on the 31st of March. Now on the 7th of April, we made our way to Road Atlanta, back to the US of A for the state of Georgia, in particular the town located nearby of Brazelton. Indeed, at Road Atlanta really delivering with regards to the racing action, albeit on the shorter layout, but our drivers there finding plenty of means to battle one another into the tight corners. Rounds 9 and 10, we continued in the US of A and made our way to Summit Point Raceway, and there in a more classical circuit, our drivers did not show any hesitation about pulling punches and whatnot. Indeed, we saw plenty of battling and many a free wide down the start, finish straight into turn number 1 on the full 14th of April. Then, to conclude the first half of the season, we made our way back down under to Australia for the Phillip Island Grand Prix circuit, and there with sweeping corners, its undulations and its rises, we saw our drivers really go to task, and it was Nathan Wade who really was showing the consistency throughout. Indeed, that's what led to him starting to pull a considerable championship lead. That was the 21st of April, and then we continued into the second half of the season with no mid-season break on the 28th of April with a visit to Japan, and indeed heading across the Pacific region to the Okayama International Circuit, and it may have been a remote circuit, but indeed we brought it all live, and the race in action at Okayama was some of the very best we've seen all season. In the fact, our drivers found ways to go too wide over the entirety of the lap in rounds 13 and 14, and that continued into last week, of course. On the 5th of May, we visited Canada for the one and only circuit Charles Villeneuve, and the Montreal City circuit there really delivering in our first essentially hybrid street open road circuit, and today we make our way back to the open road circuit in Germany at the Nürburgring. After this round, we still got 6 more to go, 3 more venues to head to, and that'll start off in the US of A, and indeed we'll stay there for the rest of the calendar. And on the 19th of May, we make our way to the city of Detroit in the state of Michigan for the Belle Isle Grand Prix circuit in rounds 19 and 20. The circuit, of course, that's no longer being used as of this year. Indeed, IndyCar are moving to an alternative circuit in the city of Detroit, but Belle Isle, of course, a staple for IndyCar for so long, and our drivers will be taking it to its wonderful running textures with the fact that our drivers make their way across the variable road surfaces of asphalt and concrete. They'll need to stay clear of the wall and make sure to keep it out of the wall if they want to come away with the ultimate points. And in the penultimate venue of the season, we make our way from the state of Michigan to the state of New York for the one and only Watkins Glen International, and that's on the 26th of May, rounds 21 and 22, really setting up the run into the season finale. And it will go from Skip Barber does at NASCAR to what will be the Virginia International Raceway in the state of Virginia, and we'll on the 23rd and with that rounds 23 and 24 on the 2nd of June, we'll bring the curtain on down there, and what a brilliant circuit with fast flying corners, and indeed the action does not let up, whether it be from the start of the season all the way to the finish. But speaking of the action, of course, let's take a look at the championship standings after 16 rounds of racing and give you an update there. And we can see in the Drivers' Championship, Nathan Wade now standing at a margin extending to 188 points over Adam Miles, who has found his way into P2 for the first time this season. But Miles only holding a 2-point advantage over Steffen Herrmann. Indeed, right now for Adam Miles, who is on a streak of 5 wins back-to-back. Indeed, he's had 5 all the way on the bounce, and now looking to try and make it a further 6 and 7 wins tonight. And if he does so, he'll be able to break clear Steffen Herrmann and start to close down Nathan Wade. Albeit time is running out, of course, and therefore for Nathan Wade, this is an opportunity today if he's able to put together 2 very strong results. Indeed, if he can pick up at least 1 win, and Adam Miles perhaps has a difficult one, the same for Steffen Herrmann, then Nathan Wade could be crowned champion ahead of the final 6 rounds of the season when drop scores are considered into effect. So for Wade, it is pivotal today. Indeed, we may expect him to potentially put the crown on his head come the end of it. Still, Adam Miles won't be perturbed by that. He'll focus on just getting the gap down as much as he possibly can, and Steffen Herrmann the same will be looking to bounce back and go on the offensive versus Adam Miles, with both of them picking up a nice score of points last time out, but it was Miles who was the double victor. Jeff Randall in P4, he stands what is 30 points clear of Gordon Vandenbergen, with Jeff Randall starting to feel a little bit of a decline in form recently, albeit he would argue it's just not worked out his way, and we'd agree with him on that one, in the fact that whilst he's had the pace to be on pole in a good number of races, it hasn't worked out in the races themselves, and that's enabled him to fall back towards Gordon Vandenbergen, and conversely Vandenbergen really showing growing strength, albeit he's got to worry about the fact that Daniel Tuff's only 7 points behind is an ever-present fact. And indeed, Daniel Tuff, perhaps the driver who's weaker in qualifying compared to the races. He's not had the qualifying sessions go his way necessarily, but in the races, Tufts always finds a way. It doesn't matter if he qualifies inside or outside the top 10, he will be there battling for the top 5 come the end of each and every race. Ryan Jackson, P7, has gained 2 places since the last round. In the fact we can see there, moving into P7 with 37 points gained, ahead of Rasmus Esvori, Christian Perez and Neil Gardner. And go for Neil Gardner's 179 points to conclude the top 10. We can see a best of the rest there, a further way 24 points behind one Zia Rodriguez in P11. And will the battle to be outside the top 10 in that best of the rest position in P11, it could not be tighter. For he's only got a 2-point advantage over Remco Pleister, and Pleister really showing great pace at Montreal, but wasn't quite able to bring home the results that echoed that. But he'll be taking the momentum he picked up in Canada to Germany today, and Paul Smithhurst a further 13 points behind, dropping a position to Pleister. But the thing is with Paul Smithhurst, Had some difficulty, of course. Smithhurst looking very strong in qualifying and going into the races, but as soon as he turned the first lap, it all unfolded in difficulty, and Smithhurst not really able to recover from that. Roddy van der Meyden, meanwhile, also gaining 3 places now up to P14 and keeping the threat on versus Rodriguez, Plyce and Smithhurst on 137 points, with Enzo Cantor in P15, and Enzo Cantor having a difficult day in Montreal, being involved in a large number of incidents, albeit putting his hand up to a good number of them, saying that he may have been the one to kick off the incident, and he'll be coming into today with a calmer head. There's no doubt about it. On 136 points, and then there's still a top 10 up for grabs if he's able to put the result in the store. Jack Atkinson in P16 at 3 points ahead of Mark Beckhouse, with Nick Vaughan Roberts there in P18, again a limited number of points, didn't quite work out in Montreal, and now he's under pressure from Titus de Jong, who's only 6 points behind, who's moved to P19. David J. Burns completes your top 20 on 92 points, and as we look outside the top 20, we can see a further 9 points behind AJ Campbell, with JT Kapinen moving up to P22, and Kapinen having a great day in Montreal, 38 points gained, and it's really now put him in the hunt for a top 20 finish in the season. Stephen Krumholz and Terry McGrath both on 68 points, with Krumholz ahead based on result countback, and it's Chris Wayne in P25 ahead of Paolo Anzioso, with Sebastian Holmichael, who's joined us quite late in the season, moving out into P27 with another reasonable day of performance. And keep your eyes out for Holmichael. Of course, he always seems to find a way to get into those nice battles at the bottom end of the top 10. Kevin Budgeon, Clark Williams and Ludwig Sau complete your top 30, and outside the top 30 in P31, we have Anders S. Nielsen ahead of Nigel Easy, with Peter van der Noord on 14 points, the same as Benjamin Haas and Ryan G. Walker, but indeed the way they are at the moment is due to result countback. P36 is Mark Rayner on 5 points, 3 clear of Tim Bertie and Dave Devine, with Arnold Chabannet and Darragh Frattini completing your top 40. Frattini, the first of our drivers yet to score any points, and the same is extended also to Marcel Brinsweiler, Wojciech Putzek and Ollie Pimley, and that's how the standings stand after what is 16 rounds of racing. As we come on to our circuit for today, well, of course, it needs no introduction technically. It's the Nürburgring Combined, or the Gesamtstrecke 24-hour Laut, as it's also known properly, and located near the city of Nürburg in the German state of Rhineland-Palatinate in Germany. It is a circuit like no other when it comes to racing action. In the fact that as our drivers make their way across the start-finish line, they start on the Grand Prix Strecke Loop and make their way around, and the only part of it that we do not include in terms of the racing here is the Mercedes Arena. Indeed, we use the Yokohama S chicane instead, and as our drivers make their way on around, it'll feel very traditional and a circuit that they're all very comfortable with. But as soon as they make their way into turn number 13, that's where the circuit completely changes, or as they make their way onto the Nordschleife Loop, it starts off with the Sabine Schmidt curve, and with over 100 corners to confront, that lap time is going to take, and it will feel like an eternity, but indeed they'll charge their way up through the Eifel Mountains, through the corner combinations such as the Hatzenbach sequence, also through Flugplatz, the sweeping right-hander, up through Schwedenkreuz and in towards Arenberg, and as they then make their way over the Eifel Mountains, it'll be the run down the hill into the compression and up to Aldenauer Forst. Also, they'll head up into the corners such as Kallenhard, and also Dreifeld Rex, the very cumbersome and tricky hairpin of what is Versailles, also the uphill run through Exmüller Curve and into Bergwerk, which is the charge all the way up to the highest point in the circuit as they make their way up towards Mutt Curve, also nicknamed Bravery Corner or Confidence Corner, depending on your perspective, and then into Stillstrecke, the right-hander that sets up the run into the infamous Caracola Carousel. But it's not just about the run over the mountain, it's also the run downhill, and once they clear Hedwig's Höhe, they'll come downhill, start off at Whipperman Corner and run it into Brünchen Corner, also nicknamed YouTube Corner, because typically if you type into YouTube, although we don't recommend you normally do it of course, but it's not nice to see drivers having accidents, but if you type in Nürburgring crash compilations, you'll typically see most of those compilations featuring at Brünchen Corner, and hence why it's got the nickname of YouTube Corner, where drivers get it wrong there, and also as they exit Brünchen, they'll make their way up into Ice Curve before charging all the way down through Flansgarden and through the Steven Baloff S, and then coming all the way up to Schwalbenschwanz Corner, Klein's Carousel, the smaller version of the carousel there, and then they'll come out of Gauenkopf and on to the extended back straight, which really concludes the lap, and that is of course known as the Dottinger Höhe. But it's not quite completed there, as they still got to make their way through Tiergarten and Hohenrhein to complete the lap and start it all over again. And thank you to iRacing.com for their wonderful simulator, which really does bring the Nürburgring to life, and of course the brilliant circuit maps that come with it. But as our drivers get ready to go racing, let's give you a reminder of the rules, of course. And well, this is an open setup series first and foremost, which does mean that our drivers bring setups of their choice to each and every round, and well, it's going to be much about what our drivers prefer today in terms of what gives them the most confidence to take the Nürburgring head on rather than being a preferable setup. And car fuel loads for today shall be restricted to 70% rather than the standard 60%. Now, why is this, you may be asking us? Well, the reason being because they need 70% of the fuel tank to be able to do 3 laps around here in the sprint race without the risk of needing to make a pit stop, but that does mandate, or we're expected to mandate, a pit stop in the feature race where there's the 4 laps instead. Now, qualifying-wise, an open qualifying format shall be used, but all of our drivers are out of the circuit, and as we said earlier, our drivers are currently out on the circuit doing their qualifying laps, and as we continue to extend the rules here, we can see it. In terms of the races shall commence via a standing start, as is a tradition of this series, with 1 fast repair being available, and the drivers shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more instant points, and they'll be disqualified from a given race if they accumulate 25 or more. Now, in the sprint race, there are no mandatory pit stop requirements, we should say, so therefore our drivers are expected to be all in, all out from start to finish. But in the feature race, this is where it gets interesting. Of course, we have the standard in that the grid shall be set based on the results of the sprint race, with the top 10 finisher positions being inverted, so that means the winner of the sprint race will start in P10 for the feature, and we work our way down through the finisher positions to the P10 finisher, who starts on pole for the feature, and then the 11th place finishes on low. That's exactly where they'll start for the feature race. But however, you'll notice there a slight change to the mandatory pit stop requirement. Drivers are expected to make 1 pit stop to take on fuel. So what does that mean? There is no requirement for the drivers to come into the pits if they can save the fuel to do the full lap. And if a driver does dare to do so, they may gain sufficient time to be able to continue to lead the race all the way to the end. But given the extent of lap around here, and as we said earlier, we're expecting laps to be approximately 10 minutes, if not longer than that, I do wonder whether anybody will be tempted to go out there on all 4 laps without taking on some extra fuel, given the fact they'll only be spending approximately 20 to 30 seconds in the pit lane, if that. But that's enough rules, regulation, everything in between. I know what you're all here for, the racing. Well, with qualifying underway currently, we do look to our drivers making the way on around, and we do see Jeff Randall heading on through right now and down onto what is the Dottin straight onto the backstretch. He goes for Skipping Racing and just gradually building up the speed. But as we do bring up the qualifying times there on the bottom of your screen in terms of the lap times that are currently going on in, we see the first time on the board, and that is from Adam Miles, P2 in the championship, and a 9:55.625. Indeed, this is going to feel a very long qualifying session. You can see that we still do have 35 minutes of it to go. All the drivers right now just gradually getting themselves set, and we see Randall making his way down the back straight. Now, in terms of mid-race interviews for today, we may be able to catch 1 or 2 of our drivers when they're on their next out lap, if they come into the pits to take a bit of a breather. But otherwise, it's a little bit less likely we're going to get mid-race interviews today. We might try and get some in the break if there is time. We're going to let our drivers focus here, and we are expecting some more drivers to join at midway through the qualifying session. Not all of them are able to join immediately, but as we do see Randall just sliding his way through the last couple of corners there and getting himself set. Indeed, a smooth run through Horn Rain and onwards towards the start-finish line he goes. Well, it's not going to be quite in the ballpark of Adam Miles this time. What can Randall do here as he comes on through? Well, it is going to be for his first lap, P2 there on a 10:03, and well, we've still got more to come, including Sebastian Holmike on Ryan Jackson. And speaking of Ryan Jackson, here he is as he makes his way on downhill, and indeed coming on through what is known there as the Steffen Beloff S corners, as he comes in towards the long sweeping right and down further still. But it's all about car control here as he gets ready to make the major descent. Indeed, in the run on through, it's all about just simply nailing those apexes, knowing where to position the car, because you really do when you're starting that up to maximum speed. And we'll ride on board with one of our drivers shortly to give you a reference lap. And the latter half lap, it is so much more about car positioning and making sure not to clip any of the curves, because the curves around here are absolutely demoralised and indeed will destabilise the car. As soon as you hit one of them, you'll feel it through the suspension rods. And as he comes down into the kind of carousel, we're right now Jackson tucking in very nicely there. Very smooth entry, smooth exit, and that's what you really want as he heads up towards Galgenkopf corner, carrying as much speed as he possibly can. But looking from him to Daniel Tufts, and Tufts currently on an outlap here, heading on through and down what is the run there, coming out of Brunschen corner and in towards Ice Curve, and as he slides his way on through. Of course, the thing that our drivers have to keep in mind here as well is the fact that over the entire outlap, they'll get the tyres and brakes up to temperature rather rapidly. By the time they get towards Ardenauer Force, they should have all the temperature they need, and therefore the rest of the outlap is ready to start pushing the car and get that feeling for where the rubber is on the circuit and where you can really start to attack. And with the weather conditions today being quite pleasant, and to give you you an idea of those weather conditions, we can see that on the right hand side of your screen at 90 degrees centigrade ambient, and meanwhile it's the same on the circuit. We've got clear skies, so no cloud. It is beautiful sunny weather, and well, that does mean for our drivers here it is going to be some of the most optimal conditions they could ask for in order to be able to deliver this qualifying session. And the stuff just roars its way up towards what is the Schwalben's corner here. We're getting it nicely caught in as he turns through left-hander and now into the Kleiner carousel himself. We're coming on through there. Meanwhile, heading towards the end of the lap now, Ryan Jackson, and this will be his first lap on the board. He did go purple midway through the lap in subsector 9, and well, to put you in the frame there, we do have a grand total of 14 subsectors over the entirety of the lap. It is a very long lap, and it is broken up into quite distinct parts, and as Gordon van der Bergen goes P2 on a 10-minute 02, Jackson there, another, what is 9-minute lap, it's 9:59.680, and well, Jackson moving up, and well, you can see the gaps there. And so you may be wondering at this point, the fact that Miles is currently 4 seconds clear of Jackson, does that mean this qualifying session is all said and done? Well, as we look to Adam Miles here, we can clarify no, it's not, because essentially with the length of the lap, you can treat that 4-second gap as being the equivalent of around half a second if we want a much shorter circuit, because of course typically the circuits we've raced on, if you do a little bit of mathematics here, have been around the region of 1.5 to 2 minutes. So let's simplify it a little bit by saying the lap here's 10 minutes, you've got a 2-minute lap at some of the other circuits, and where Miles has perhaps been on pole by say 4/10 of a second, well, it's a factor of 5, so you do that, 4/10 multiplied by 5 would be 2 seconds, so you could say here that right now, in fact, this equates to approximately 8/10 by comparison, because 8/10 times 5 gives you 4 seconds, so therefore that lap time could be found very quickly, and Miles making his way on down into Dryfet Rex, the triple right-hander at the moment, and this is where it's all about nailing those apexes one after the other before heading down into Versailles corner, but you've got to brake well before the hairpin and just get the car to a dead stop into the very late left-hand apex, but he gets it hooked up there very smooth indeed. But as he does, we say hello to a good number of you in the YouTube chat, including there, what is it, Beaches and Reno Yank, who says, oh no, it's the Nords combined, it is madness, madness says I, it'll be fun at madness though, and indeed, I agree with you there, Beaches, 100%, and I must say, having practiced this circuit earlier in the week, competing in the official iRacing GT Challenge Series, albeit using GT1 class cars rather than the Skip Barber Formula 2000, and I've done quite a few laps around here myself in preparation for racing on Monday. It is an absolute stamina drainer, this one, and credit to our drivers, just keeping it out of the wall and on circuit for the entirety of the lap, and remembering all the corners is an achievement in of itself, and to be able to then go on to take a podium, alternatively pole position in qualifying and a podium or the win in the race, well, that is taking a step even further. As we do see Neil Garner making his way through what is the Sabine curve, named after the legendary Queen of the Nürburgring, of course, infamous for her run on the TV show in the United Kingdom of Top Gear, where she aimed to try and take a Ford Transit van, albeit slightly modified for weight reduction, around in sub 10 minutes. Didn't quite do it, but of course Sabine Schmidt having a great reputation well before seeing herself come onto the mainstream media in the United Kingdom with that episode of Top Gear, in the fact a racing driver through and through, and a thoroughbred driver in terms of her approach to racing, and will dearly missed, but will always be known as the Queen of the Nürburgring for all the right reasons. Indeed, if you do look her up, you'll see why she has that title, and I think she may be the only lady who will ever take that title, given the pace that she brought to the circuit and also her demeanour. But of course, this circuit has been the scene of many a triumph, but also many a difficult day in motorsport. And you may be wondering about the graffiti on the road, as we do look to the blimp camera currently, as Neil Gardner makes his way on up towards what is the corner sequence complex of the Schwedenkreuz into Arenberg, albeit going via Cottonbourne, the straightway heading all the way up with its curvature. And the graffiti you see, some of it there is just where people have visited over time, but also some of the graffiti is in tribute to drivers who have lost their lives at the circuit over its extended history. Indeed, the circuit being in the best part of almost 100 years old now, if my memory serves me correctly. In fact, I think a little bit less than that, probably more in the region of 80 years old. But as he comes on down, Gardner here just keeping it nice and tight there and heading all the way down towards the compression. And as he does, dropping the wires, well, it's going to be all about setting the car up. But as I say, we will get on board with all of our drivers in due course, and we will be getting on board in the next few minutes. And I think we might be getting on board with Adam Miles, the current pole sitter, as he'll be going on to one last lap, as we do see Garner just coming up through Ardenau Force now, and a very smooth run indeed there as he exits the complex sequence to the left into right. and now heads up towards the next set of corners. Of course, next up for him will be the run into Metzgertsfeld and Callan-Hard. And as he comes in towards the next braking zone, where it will be more of a lift and coast through Metzgertsfeld, I reckon, given the speed of these cars. But it does feel as though they're making their way gradually along, albeit with that, of course, it gives our drivers plenty of time to think about where to position the car. And one of the interesting things around here is typically when you see this circuit featured in series such as GT3 class racing or endurance class racing, you'll see that the cars normally occupy at least half the road surface, and that makes overtaking very difficult around here in terms of over an entire lap. Most of the overtaking is restricted to the Grand Prix loop, alternatively the run down the Dottingham Straight. But in these Skip Barber Formula 2000 machines, the Skippies, of course, very narrow cars, and you can see in this image exactly what we're referring to, and the fact that road surface is enough for two cars to go side by side, albeit is it recommended in diverse siphon? Potentially not, but it does mean that overtaking is much more viable here compared to most classes of racing, so we can expect overtaking moves to be made in a variety of places, and therefore it's not necessarily going to be processional racing. But at the same time, as we did hear from a number of our interviewees come the end of the racing at Montreal last week, they're expecting all the major battles to occur on the final lap down the Dottingham in towards Tiergarten, given the fact that that is where the drivers will be in the toe of one another and picking up that ultimate speed. As Garner makes his way in towards Oisbergwerk corner shortly. Meanwhile, we look from him to what is Roddy van der Meyden, as we do see him coming down on the ground. In fact, up the hill he goes, heading all the way up towards what will be a Mutkurve corner, heading via Kesselchen and Klosterol. But as he heads all the way up, and the gradual tie will be to get up towards the right-hander of Steelstrecker corner, where it is a very long run. It can feel like an eternity, but you want to keep the revs as high as possible and only upshift at the last possible one, as we're hearing that both Jack Atkinson and Enzo Cantor have just arrived at circuit side with approximately half the qualifying session or just under remaining. They've got time to get out there, and therefore we are going to have a field currently of what it's going to be. If my numbers are correct, I believe it is 12 drivers taken to the grid, but we can expect some more. Indeed, some drivers maybe not be looking at qualifying laps given the length of the lap here, and instead we'll be just focusing on getting themselves set for going racing, because of course you do have to have a lot of energy to get one lap in, let alone at multiple. But speaking of that, as Adam Miles heads across the timeline, he charges on through, and I believe he's going to pull over here, and it's a 9:54.263 for Miles, as he does make his way back into the pit lane and gets ready to go once again. And well, they're out of fuel, but all set. And Adam Miles right now, your provisional pole sitter by 5.5 seconds. Meanwhile, Ryan Jackson heading on around, and Jackson keeping it nice and smooth as he heads on through and up the hill. But as he does, Jackson doing everything right now for the P2 position. I do think here we want him to get a little bit closer to Miles this time, rather than being that far off. So I don't think they'll want to let Adam Miles just simply run away with things when we do go racing. But again, Titus de Jong right now starting to improve as he pulls it over come the start finish line. That's a 10-minute 2, and that is going to be 8.5 seconds off of the time set by Miles, but in return only 2 tenths of that off of Gordon Vandenbergen's P3 time. As meanwhile, we do have some other drivers making their way at the pit lane. Meanwhile, championship leader Nathan Wade coming down towards what is there, I believe that's Callan-Hard corner, and heading up towards Trifect Rex very shortly, and into the triple right-hander he goes as he comes on through here. And well, for Nathan Wade, of course, he'll be thinking about trying to get the championship sealed up nice and early with a potential pair of results today. But if not, if he can try and put it as far out of reach of other drivers, particularly Adam Miles, that'll be just as valid a target. As he comes on through at their siphon and heading up towards the bridge section, and that will be bridgeside very shortly. But as he heads in towards the left-hander, and meanwhile we look from him to one of our other drivers heading towards the end of the lap currently, and that will be Ryan Jackson as he slides his way on through the run into the Steven Beloff S as he comes on down the hill now, of course with the infamous jump already being passed. And this is where the circuit really opens up in terms of that top speed. And Jackson, to be fair, going purple in a couple of subsectors, particularly subsector 9 and 10. So Jackson has got the time out there to improve, and he's just not able to find it over the entirety of the lap in order to go purple versus Miles. As Miles on an out lap currently, but as Jackson heads up towards the front of the carousel, getting on to the brakes very shortly. Gliding on through there. Meanwhile, behind he has got Gordon Vandenbergen, and Vandenbergen also having a good run through the kind of carousel. Coming into the right-hander here of Gallenkopf, and now on to Trifect Rex. such as long right hand of this Galmenkopf corner, but you sweep your way through it to complete the run off of the Nordschleife loop, if you will, and then you have this long breathing zone where the only thing is for you to keep your foot right down the throttle 100% and not back off at all. But as he heads on down here, he'll be getting the distant toe of what will be, I believe, that'll be Rudy van der Meerden, who is currently going on to the end of his first flying lap. And in fact, we will jump on board with the Dutchman as he heads on to his second lap shortly to give you an idea of what it's like to put a lap in around the Gesamtstrecke layout on Nürburgring. And Gesamtstrecke in German just translates into English combined, if my German is correct. Well, I did GCSE German, but it's been a long time since I've needed to utilise it. Normally I just remember Guten Tag, which means good day, and also what is Auf Wiedersehen, i.e. goodbye. But as it's Auf Wiedersehen to the Dottener for Van der Meerden, and heading up towards Hohenrhein and into the final couple of corners here. Not looking to get too high in the apex, although he does so there, brings it on through very nicely. And that's going to be a lap complete for Van der Meerden. And what's it going to be as he heads across the line? Well, we'll jump on board regardless. He takes us around for a lap, heading down towards turn at number 1 in 4th gear. And well, that first time finally comes in, and it is going to be... where it's going to be at 10:04, and in fact he pulls it over to the side and decides he doesn't want to go again right now, so Van der Meerden decides to park it up. Meanwhile, Ryan Jackson does improve. He halves his deficit to Adam Miles towards a 9:56.98, so a nice lap from Ryan Jackson. Meanwhile, Neil Garner parked up there, P3, and well, whilst they get themselves set, we do have Adam Miles making his way on around, currently going on through what is there, I do believe, the run through Flugplatz, and up the hill he goes, weaving from side to side to try and get some temperature. But as he makes his way on around, we do have Enzo Canter heading towards the end of his outlap, so we might be able to get a lap from Enzo Canter. In fact, no, Canter just starting to make his way onto a lap, so we have to correct ourselves there. We'll be able to get on board with anybody for the whole lap. I think we made with Daniel Tufts, in fact, as Tufts making his way down the Dottinger right now, and all the way down as we say hello there to Zaudi in the YouTube chat. It says Wade for another podium for sure in feature, and well, indeed, right now Nathan Wade, I think, is going to be targeting podiums as a minimum today. Of course, he has been the man to pick up podiums, albeit we used to refer to him as Mr. Second Place, but last week he was Mr. Third Place, as he seems to have a habit of picking up third place in Montreal. I think he wants second place preferably, but meanwhile Tufts heads on to a lap, and we jump on board here with a Britain as he heads down towards turn at number 1. Now, first lap on the board, what's it going to be from Tufts? It'll be his baseline. It will be a 10:09. Now heading in towards the opening braking zone here, and looking to his left-hand side for the brakes, and this means the Yokohama S chicane, braking up to 100 metres, but about 80 metres on corner apex, cutting as much of the apex curve as he can, so sweeps right into the left, bounces over the curve in there, and brings the car on around in first gear. Now powering his way up the gearbox, up towards the 4th gear very shortly, before heading into the left into right combination, as he gets ready to now come to the brakes, trail braking in 3rd gear into the left-hander, now onto the brakes, and a much sharper right-hander by comparison. A lovely sequence of corners here, but the corners wind up, and then you get back on the throttle, full throttle, if you use the road camber and the preload differential of the car, and just attack in the charge down towards the Dunlop carrier from the Ford curve. Now get ready to brake here. He'll use the start of the entry curve on the left-hand side as his brake marker down to 2nd gear. Bit of an interesting corner this one. You normally want to take either a U-shaped approach or a V-shaped approach depending on your line into the corner. Gets it via U-shaped approach there for Tufts. Now heading into the Michael Schumacher S chicane, named after, of course, the infamous 7-time world champion of Formula 1. Of course, born and raised in Germany. And as he makes his way through the left into right now, up the hill and in towards what will be the next braking zone here. Looking over to his right-hand side for his brake mark, the 100-metre board, braking about 90 metres, goes a little bit deep, that carries a bit too much speed, but collects it back together as he goes into the right-hander at Bilstein curve, as he comes on through there, back on full throttle. Nice run out the corner, back into 4th gear, and now he's got one more gear as he comes on through the kink and heading up towards the Vino chicane. Now here, let the car gradually bring itself back into a straight line, bring it over to the right and onto the brakes here for the 100-metre board. In fact, braking as late as he dares here with the medium speed chicane, braking the 50 board down a third, shuts the car in, slices between the 2 corners, lets the car come into the right-hand side for turn at 13 as it's known, and then through the left-hander he goes, takes a bit of apex curve and now to the Nordschleife loop. Going into the Bienenschmidt curve, braking at the end of the Nordschleife pit lane and taking a bit too much apex curve there. You can see it unsettle the guy. He wants to avoid doing that. These curves very high compared to the GP loop. The full throttle now in the run down into the double right here and heading up towards Hatzenbach corner. This, of course, will be at the left into right combination of 5th gear. It'll be brake early once. In fact, to lift off there and now onto the brakes to drop it down 2 gears, glide the car in 3rd gear, now coming on through it to go into Hoheiken, which will be the left-right-left combination, and going through right into left here, and then it's going to be a right into left to complete it as he comes on through into the brakes. Down into 2nd gear, straight line between the 2 curves in terms of the apex is full throttle all the way through, and now making his way up towards what is full of plants via Fullbacker Hor. Now here it's all about flat out, keep the car nice and pointed to the outside on the left hand side of the road. Got a little bit of a jump here, a little bit of a bump in the road, but you can stay gun flat out. The car doesn't leave the road surface too much, and as he comes on through full of flats, completely committed there, flat out all the way. Indeed, you want every mile an hour as you make your way up towards Orenburg corner via Cottonborn, and Schwedenkreuz is the next corner coming up. And the thing with this left-hander, as you can see it off in the distance, this is a confidence test in faster classes of the car. Top speed being reached here of 126 miles an hour, 127 as he chucks into left-hander, lift off the throttle, keep a little bit of throttle in to settle the car down, and then onto the brake shortly for Orenburg corner, braking just after the curve of the Schwedenkreuz corner, through the right-hander, down to 2nd, back up to 3rd, and now it's the run downhill towards the compression. But he goes past Postbrooker corner, this left-hander here, and heading in towards Fuchsrohr. That'll be the next left-hander, which he just clears now, and now heading in towards the compression. You can see the road surface dropping into its lowest point, and then going right back up. The car being compressed there in the suspension as he goes into left-hander, and now braking into Ardenau Force. The long right, where it's about dropping 2 gears to 3rd, and then braking even more so into the left-hander that really starts off the sequence and through the right in 2nd gear. That's Ardenau Force complete as he now makes his way up towards Metzgerspfeld. Has a brief breather at this point, and Tuscan starts to take it easy a little bit. He's still got quite a lot of the lap to go, and we'll continue to ride on board as he makes his way now into left-hander. Let's listen. A little bit of a lift there as he goes to the left to settle the car down, but doesn't take the throttle completely, as otherwise the car will kick out. Going through the left into right here, takes a bit of apex go. You can see how that unsettles the car and causes him to take the other apex of the right-hander. Into Callan Hardy goes, late apex here because the curve juts out on apex. The later you go, and that's what you're targeting. Now coming on down through the Spiegel curve, then left into right here. This is a very narrow sequence in faster machines, but there you've got plenty of space to negotiate up into 5th and into dry factory X. 1 right-hander, 2 right-hander, 3 right-hander and more as he goes up towards Versiphon. This is the tricky braking zone as he brakes down early down to 3rd, getting on the brakes again after clearing the right-hander through the double left apex hairpin, and now coming on out, charging out on towards the bridge side, on towards the bridge very shortly. It's going to be flat out initially through the right-hand kink and onto the brakes as he sees the end of the exit curve and going into left-hander. No need to run on the outside curve in there, in towards where's the X-Mill curve, and here you can see the road camber really kicking in as the car's bounced around. And now back up to full throttle as he heads through X-Town, the small left-hand kink that's coming up, and then in towards Bergberg. Now as he comes in towards Bergberg corner at this point, it's all going to be about getting the best possible exit. It's a long right-hander, onto the brakes he goes, and we'll go for late apex, and then finally find it. Full throttle return now as he leaves the corner, and now heading uphill. It's the long run all the way up towards the mid-curve corner, and it's just gradually build up the speed here, and you'll notice as you get further and further along this curve straight, you'll see that the car starts to struggle to gain speed because the gradient changes becoming more and more pronounced. Up to 5th gear, he's left that as late as possible, of course, because you want the higher RPM to maintain your speed. Now up to 110 miles an hour, but the car will struggle to build, as you can see, 110, 111, but it's such a gradient that's built up now that for Tufts, it's all about just keeping the throttle fully pinned as he heads in towards the curve. And here, will he lift? No, full commitment there, not carrying enough speed to want a lift, but instead just making his way all the way on through, heading in to what we cross through a corner, the right-hander that follows, and now getting ready for Steel Strecke corner and onto the brakes when he sees the entry curve on the left-hand side, braking down hard as he comes on through, and as he goes down to 2nd gear, exit the corner here, plenty of space to negotiate on the corner exit, and he now heads up towards the Caracola Carousel, and here it's all about tucking the car in and getting nice and tight and low, and keeping it there all the way to the end. Very bumpy all the way through. You can see the car almost wanting to chuck itself out of the dip. Indeed, keeping it well in at Tufton as he powers his way now past what is Poston 147. And well, this is the left-hand corner here, and that's post 147 in terms of the marshal post around the circuit. Now coming in towards the left, into right before Hoax corner. And well, it's all going to be downhill after the right hand of Hoax as he comes into the right now. Third gear, gets a nice early apex, then carries all the speed through. And now heading into the complex at Hedwig Tower. It's going to be the right into left here, where it's all about balancing the car. And now coming into the left-hander in particular, keep the car nice and tight, ride the apex curve before setting up the right-hander. Down he goes through Whipperman and heading in towards the final part of Whipperman here and coming all the way through. It's a rise before a descent and onto the brakes here for X-Back corner very shortly. And this is another nice one. You've got to keep it as left as you possibly can to set up the right-hander that follows. And coming on through here, a little bit more circuit whip to negotiate. We're coming up towards Brunschen. Use all the entry curve on the left-hand side. Open the corner up, third gear, full throttle blast on corner exit. Now heading in towards ice curve. As he comes into left hand here, it's all about aiming for the right hand exit curve and riding it to straight line now. And now we're charging down through Flansgarden Irons as he comes on through the left hander, and well, that's just listen. Going over the jump there, dropping again a full gear as he chucks the car into the right hander that starts off the Steffen at Valoff S complex, also at 9 at Flansgarden 2 as he comes on downhill once again. And a wonderful flat-out run all the way through there, full confidence from Tufts. He now comes into the right-hander that sets up the rise in towards the Schwalbenschwanz corner. The left-hand here, he's coming down the gears to third gear, chuck all the speed in with the car. And as he comes in towards the Kleiner carousel, chuck the car in, down to third, down to second, get it nice and tight, and then immediately back up to third and corner exit. As he now heads up towards Galgenkoch corner, the lap is almost complete. Into the right-hander here, fourth gear, sends the car in. And it's going to be flat out all the way around, stays nice and tight here. I think he might have waited to open the corner up a little bit more, and that's going to cost him some entry speed. As he makes his way out to the corner, well, now it's the run down the Dottinger Hohe Straight. And what at this point in time for Daniel Tubbs, what we can think about at this point is, however he's got the lap right or wrong, he's only got a couple more corners to go, but he can just take a breather. And it gives us a good opportunity to take a quick sip of water. Now a little bit of trivia here. As he makes his way down the Dottinger Hohe, you'll normally see drivers stay over to the left-hand side of the straight, and the reason for that is because you can see the tree line on the left-hand side. What that does, it acts as a wind break. So if wind is particularly blowing towards the driver, so it's a headwind as they make the way down, staying over to the left-hand side, it reduces the effects of the headwind and means they can carry a greater top speed. But as Tufts comes on down now into Tiergarten and Hohenrain, it's the left into right here at Tiergarten before it's the more pronounced braking into Hohenrain corner, going down from fifth gear, just missing the entry wall. They're down a third, bringing it all the way through, and Tufts there showing no hesitation as he completes the lap. It's a wonderful lap from Daniel Tufts, but how strong will it be? He's currently P10. He was 14.8 seconds off of the pole lap set by Adam Miles, and well, this will be effectively his final lap, and it is going to be a 10:04 now. He's 10 seconds off, and he won't have time to get another lap in at Will Tufts, but that will be P10 at best. He locks up there into turn number 1 and will lose the rear of the car in the end. But for Tufts, I think he'll feel as though it's the qualifying session that is complete. But we still got some other drivers out there, including Chris Wayne, who has joined quite late in the day. And Wayne getting himself set as he makes his way up towards Arenberg corner. And well, this will be an outlap. He won't have time to deliver an actual registered lap for joining late, so he'll be starting at P13, and that goes with his door number as he comes on down now and up towards the compression. For Wayne, it will all be about getting a sighting lap in and getting himself set for going racing in anger. Miles in the pit lane, he thinks it's all said and done. Jackson's in the pit lane at 2.7 seconds off in P2 with Neil Garner P3. And Gardner here, well, he's got the job all done, albeit he is on another lap. And speaking of drivers coming to the end of a lap, here's Nathan Wade, currently P4, 7.5 seconds off of Miles' pole time. And can Wade find a time to improve as he heads on down? As we're in, the Teaser de Jong has left the pit lane, so he's decided to go for a sighting lap. But as Wade comes on through the last corners of Hohenrain and on towards the timeline here, he's gone personal best in every subsector so far. So for Wade, this is going to be an improvement, but he is currently 1.4 seconds off of Gardner's time. So I wonder how much is going to be in this as he heads across the timeline very shortly. And it is going to be PV for Nathan Wade. So far, 9:58.370. But can Neil Garner respond? Well, Garner on a lap at this time. He will get the lap finish come the end of it, as he's making his way there through Hudson back very shortly. So he has got plenty of time to go. And for Gardner now, it's all about just simply keeping it together and trying to react. Meanwhile, driver on a lap, his first lap of the day, is Jack Atkinson. He's completed his out lap and he's heading on up through the hill. Through mid-curve corner and in towards Stillstrecker very shortly. And well, for Atkinson at the moment, in terms of his sector times, looking quite fast, and he may just be able to deliver a lap that could be enough to arrive or a place inside what is the top 3 rows of the grid. Albeit we'll have to wait to see how this plays out in its full conclusion, but his sector times have been looking relatively good. And in terms of the sectors where Adam Miles has not been as strong as others potentially, it has been in particular subsector 5, so that's been the run out of what would be coming through floodplains up towards Ehrenberg, and in the run down through the compression before Ordnau Force. That's where his weakest sector has been compared to others, but otherwise Adam Miles really has been purple for the most part, and Ryan Jackson has been a bit faster later on in the lap, so in particular through the carousel, the Caracalla carousel, and up through and down Whipperman. That is the stronger part of the lap for Ryan Jackson, so he seems to enjoy the downhill run rather than the uphill run. But as we continue to see, with Atkinson coming on through and down for the next sequence of corners here. Well, at this point, he'll just be throwing caution to the wind and thinking, well, if I get a lap in, then it's all well and good, but if not, then it's all going to be about starting from towards the back of the grid and trying to fight his way on through it. And it's been some time since we've seen Jack Atkinson on the grid, but it's great to see the Briton returning as this round, with his pair of rounds, I should say. And what a pair of rounds he's picked to return at, as he glides his way on down and towards the Bunchton corner he goes. And very nicely done there, very smooth approach. And of course, these cars, as we've seen all the way through the season, you want them to be a little bit oversteery in nature, and that's why our drivers do set up the anti-roll bar on the car and also the spring perch offset in order to give excess rotation on the rear. It's about using the throttle in order to control how much rotation the car has, and when you get it right, it looks like these cars are on the skates in the way they just glide from corner to corner as he goes through the jump there and heading up through the Steffen Beloff S now, and as he comes on charging on down for Atkinson, it's looking a good lap, but what's it going to be on that final time? And the same for Enzo Cantor. He's currently coming towards the end of a lap. He's just coming up through what is Boston 147 and towards one at corner, but as he comes into the right hander now, it's not going to be long before he begins the downhill descent through the likes of what will be a Whippen and such forth. As meanwhile, Jeff Randall heading towards the timeline, and Randall currently on a partially improving lap. Can Randall find a way to completely improve here as he heads up towards the timeline? I don't think he's going to be able to as he comes into the braking zone, albeit if he's going to do it, it's all going to be in the final 3 subsectors. That's where his main improvements will be, and then this fourth and final subsector will be the cherry on the proverbial cake as he comes on through towards the timeline. And what's it going to be for Jeff Randall? Previous best, of course, being a 10-minute 3.25, and this time does he get into the 9s or does he stay in the 10s? He improves to 10-minute 0.1, and for Jeff Randall, it's a 1.38, and that's going to be P5, which puts him on the 3rd row of the grid ahead of Sebastian Holmichael. But is it enough to be able to take it one step further? Well, Jack Atkinson right now looking quite fierce. He makes his way down the Dottingham straight, albeit it's a very long run, and what our camera just gradually following him as he gets ready to head underneath the bridge. And that'll be the Bilstein Billboard Bridge, of course. And as he powers his way ever further so, heading on past what is the Touristenfahren exit, where you can, of course, pay to take your own car or ride in a Nürburgring taxi at any point in the year. Albeit I think the winter season of the circuit is closed, but typically you can pay for most of the year to go out there for a lap of the circuit. And we're interested too in regards to if you get it wrong at the circuit, you do make contact with one of the rules. You pay for I believe it's every mile of Armco barrier that needs to be repaired, and also the damage to your own car, of course. But keeping it on the circuit there, Jack Atkinson making his way to the line. And when it's 4 minutes left to go in this qualifying session, it'll be the only lap he delivers, but it's P5 for Atkinson with a 10-minute flat 0.84. And well, for Atkinson, he's absolutely delivered. And can Enzo Cantor potentially also get himself in there as he comes out of Gallencott corner? Well, now for Cantor, all the way down he goes. And nobody coming close to beating Miles this time. Adam Miles in a class of his own in terms of his qualifying session. Again, to translate that gap to Jackson of 2.7 seconds into a shorter lap time, if we divide it by a factor of 5, which is our rounding, we would say there it's going to be about half a second is the overall gain he has, Miles versus Jackson in literal terms. And that does mean for Miles, he does seem to be the master of the Nürburgring. And can anybody find a way to usurp him in the race? That will be the change that is now going to be confronted by drivers. As we see here, Cantor will be, I believe, the last driver to complete a lap around the circuit, given the fact we do have Neil Gardner making his way on down through Whipperman at the moment. Gardner may just creep towards the end of the lap. He may just get in with one final lap, albeit Gardner has been struggling in the first half of laps. It's going to be the latter half where all the improvements are going to come. But meanwhile, Cantor coming on out of the final corners at Horn Rain and on towards the timing line. What's this going to be from the Italian as he heads towards the line? And the Movano course driver here, I think, will feel as though it's a good lap. But how good is it? It's P4 there for Cantor. It's a nice lap, a 9:58.523, and that puts him on the second row of the grid and only 1.5 tenths off of Nathan Wade's P3 time, which is very close there in the battle for P3 between the two of them. And I expect we can see some sparks fly in the race. Meanwhile, last driver out there to try and put a lap in, it's Neil Gardner, Chris Wayne in the pit lane. And Wayne not able to get a lap in, given the fact he joined the qualifying session with less than 20 minutes to go. But Gardner coming on down. And through the Steffen Beloff S now, onwards he goes towards what will be the Schwalbenschwan's corner shortly. Albeit a long run here. It'll feel like an eternity where he's got to keep the throttle pinned and just carry the confidence on through. You can see the car gliding as it makes way through the right-hander and arc towards the left-hander of Schwalbenschwan's. And as he comes in towards the blind carousel very shortly, the number 74 definitely on a charge. Currently P5, keep in mind. So if he is able to find some improvement here, as he, oh my good lord, and that was very close to the exit there in terms of what is exiting the circuit, heading towards the barrier, coming down the blind carousel, carrying so much speed as Neil Gardner. He is full attack right now. And as he comes down through Gallencott corner here, full commitment, carrying all the speed he dares to dream of, going on to the Dotting straight, and that's just a long run, plus Tiergarten and Horn Rain to complete the lap. He will get there just in time with 1.5 minutes left on the clock. Well, we have got a minute left on his lap, and as he heads on down, it does look as though he's almost rolling to a stop there, but that's the camera angle. Do not let it deceive you. As meanwhile, Daniel Tufts, I believe, has made his way into the pit lane. So Tufts has completed his final qualifying lap. He was not improving, so he's decided enough's enough. He just returns to the pit. Meanwhile, we've had a bit of an instant for Gordon van den Bergen up at what would be the run heading into Versifen. I do believe. We'll try and understand what's happened to him. In fact, no, it's up towards the Nutkurve corner. It went wrong for Gordon van den Bergen, so it means everybody right now is in the pit lane, minus Neil Gardner, who heads on through Tiergarten into Horn Rain corner. And well, he improved in what was the previous sector in the run on towards Golden Cop, and now it is just finally the last two corners. It's a complete lap. Currently P5. Will he find the time to move himself on to the second row? He's going to have to find almost 2 seconds to beat Enzo Cantor's P4 time. Neil Gardner previously on a 10-minute 0.23. He crossed the timeline. He does improve, but it's not enough. It is still a 10-minute 0.23. It's just a tiny bit faster by 1,000th or 2. And for Neil Gardner, that is it for qualifying. Meanwhile, we've got a couple of drivers making their way out of the pit lane, albeit I think here just going on out there to simply get back in the car for a brief moment. They're itching to go racing, but it does mean it's Adam Miles on pole, and he'll be joined on the front row of the grid by Ryan Jackson, with Nathan Wade and Enzo Cantor on your second row. That's qualified complete, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for us to go racing. And as our drivers make their way to the grid for the first race of the day, the 3-lap sprint, this is how they'll line up for round number 17 of the Musical Money Gone Skipping Racing at Skip Barber Challenge Trophy for 2023. Adam Miles takes pole position in the end by 2.7 seconds over Ryan Jackson, with the two privateers being followed up by the privateer of Nathan Wade on the second row, and SRC Movano races Enzo Cantor P4. The third row of the grid goes to the privateer pair of Neil Garner and Jack Atkinson, and they'll be followed up on row at number 4 by Gordon van den Bergen for Sickhead Racing, and RT Races Titus de Jong, with Roddy van der Maiden for STN Races started off our 6th row in P11, joined by the privateer of Daniel Tufts P12, and then last but not least on what is the 7th row of the grid for Gone Skipping Racing, it is Chris Wayne starting at P13. And well, as all of our drivers get set, of course it's going to be fast, it's going to be furious, and we can see In the middle field, particularly on row number 4, Jeff Randall and Sebastian Holmichael. It is going to be close between them, given the fact they were only separated by a couple of attempts in the end. And well, all the drives now set, and everybody absolutely salivated at the prospect of getting to terms with the circuit in anger. But Adam Miles, of course, the driver just parked up there, waiting to go, all set and comfortably in position. And well, as the timer continues to tick down here, well, very shortly we will be going racing. Jeff Randall, the final driver to take to the grid. But otherwise, we have got 12 of 13 drivers on the grid currently. I think everyone just finalising their setups. And well, it's Miles versus Jackson in the run towards turn at number 1. And who is it going to be come the exit? Will it be Miles? Will it be Jackson? Will we await the lights? 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out, and away we go for the first race of the day as Adam Miles looks to continue his win streak as he makes his way down towards turn number 1. The distant camera shot being given way to a closer camera shot in return. And as they head in towards the braking zone, you can see Jackson and Wade already starting to battle for P2. Meanwhile, further back, Atkinson looking around the outside to cover off Randall, and he'll hold the inside into turn number 2. A bit of contact there between Vandenbergen and Atkinson. Vandenbergen on the back of Atkinson as they make the way out. Randall's going to try and hold it around the outside now as they head down towards turn number 3. But as they do, Randall gets ahead further behind Holmichael, still trying to make the move here versus Daniel Tufts. Can't quite find it as they come through the left into right, and meanwhile into the braking zone for the right hander they go, and Roddy van der Meijden round the outside there, but he's only going to find one way, and that is going backwards on the outside line as Chris Wayne takes the position for P12. But heading on down here, and as they charge their way into the next set of corners, all onto the brakes, of course. 3 laps of racing here in this first race of the day. And as we do see the lap count appear at the top of your screen, all the drivers right now making the way uphill out of the Dunlop Carrier S-curve and into the hairpin, I should say, and in towards the Michael Schumacher S-curve. But as they come up right on through the left hand, the field right now settling down for a brief moment. But of course, all the major overtaking opportunities would normally be found just on the GP-Strecke loop. But with the width of these cars, it does mean that overtaking is possible over the entirety of the lap. But Jackson coming on through the right hand there of turn at number, what is effectively turn at number 13, turn number 12 I should say, when it's just the GP loop being used, but that's the Bilstein curve when we refer to it by names, and we'll use names where we possibly can. And as they make the way up through the kink and up towards the Vidal chicane, we'll Wade here looking for a move once again versus Jackson. Jackson covers him off in the middle of the road, onto the brakes they go, and no change between them as Enzo Cantor stays there. Cantor gets a good run off corner, but slides a little bit on the second part of Vidal. Meanwhile, Jack's going to defend here as they make the way through T13 as it's known. Cantor goes deep, let's see Bovado race. That's going to open the door for Neil Gardner. Gardner looks up the inside but backs off there as they make the way into the speed split curve, and onto the Nordschleife loop they go for the first time in anger in race conditions. As they power their way on down, Adam Miles already starting to open up the lead in this race, as meanwhile Enzo Cantor under increasing pressure from Neil Gardner as we ride on board and look back from the rear of the Italian's car. Now coming up through the signals course of Hatson back at this point, you can see Gardner there right and menacing, but of course it's all going to be about trying to stay as close as possible for the elongated straights, particularly the run out of Flugplatz. They make the way now up towards the aforementioned tricky right-hander, and as they come over through what will be the right to left that just precedes it, well right now Cantor doing everything right here to try and open up a bit of a gap. But as they power their way on through the complex corners sequence and up towards the Flugplatz corner they go by Kudelback. You can see now Cantor starting to get a bit closer to Wade as they head through the right hand here, flat out all the way. Dirty air, of course, not really impacting the car as we've heard previously, but Jackson meanwhile looking vulnerable. He's 1.4 seconds off of Miles, and I don't think he's going to be able to look at the tyre in front, because right now he's got Wade trying to go around his outside as they make the way up towards corner. Now it's still a long run here as they make the way with the next undulation, but who's going to back out as Cantor there tries to make it too wide versus Jackson into the left. They come on through and Jackson tucks back in ahead. Cantor backs off, and sensibly so here. We don't want any major incidents before they've even completed half a lap, and as they come up through the right hander of Orenburg corner, meanwhile Jack Atkinson still behind Jeff Randall, and the privateer having a bit of difficulty trying to find his way past the God-skipping racing machine as they head up towards the compression. Now charging on down and into the compression sequence here. It's all going to be about bravery and staying close to the car in front as Bowles is just running away with things at the front of the field. Already 1.5 second gap. Nathan Wade up to P2, and I think Wade may be pulling them all on as we jump on board here with Jack Atkinson, and it's a long trade of 6 cars in the battle for P2. Nathan Wade's at the front of the pack, then you've got Jackson, then Cantor, Gardner, Randall and Atkinson who we're riding on board with, and a further 9 tenths back. That's called for Nürburgring in P8, albeit we can't see him of course, but Atkinson at the back of this train as they make the way up towards Metzger's Feld. as they come in towards the left-hander. This is where the dirty air will be felt, given the fact it is a sweeping left, as we see a bit of side-by-side there, car off the road, and that is, I believe, Jackson being knocked wide in some contact with, I think it was Cantor he made contact with. We'll take a look back at that very shortly, but with that he does rejoin, and Atkinson not able to gain, and meanwhile everybody else able to do so, and this is going to be Vandenbergen right into the mix. They come on down and in towards drive that Rex. We take a look back at what exactly happened to Ryan Jackson. With only moments to go, Enzo Cantor on his inside. Was there contact? There was. It looks like there was netco contact between us. The wheels did not come together, but Jackson there, his car being turned slightly with the netco with Enzo Cantor's car. Unfortunate, but Jackson did bring it back together in the end, and well, it was very close, but Jackson just about keeping it alive as they make the way on down and in towards what will be Roadshow Corner onto the bridge. But as we return to live pitch, as we look back here to the battle for P12 between Roddy van der Meijden for STN versus Gone Skipping Racing's Chris Wayne, and with these two falling off of the rest of the pack, will be enjoying their own little battle as they head into the right-hander of X-Muller curve. But Van der Meijden all over the back of Wayne. Wayne having a poor run through the corner. Meanwhile, up the road, Vandenbergen here, the German trying to find moves on what is Atkinson and also Jackson. And well, up the inside of Atkinson he goes into the right-hander of Bergberg corner. It's going to be a drag race up the hill. Meanwhile, Enzo Cantor is now into P2. He's got ahead of Nathan Wade, but it's a long run in the run up towards Mudcurve corner. At this point, it becomes a drag race about positioning. As you can see, Daniel Tufts as well, taking a little bit of grass there on the inside as they come up through Kesselchen and in towards Klosterol gradually. But as they do, Kesselchen right now offering plenty of space. Ford tries to go side by side all the way through, albeit Tufts now backing outside as Vandenbergen holds the inside front for the right-hand king. Meanwhile, Atkinson still trying to get a nose ahead here. Nobody wanted to back out too much at the moment. I think Jack Atkinson will have the inside in towards mid-curve corner. And now we can see Tufts there taking the position of Jackson. Jackson's made to go a little bit wide. It's going to cost him a bit of speed in the run in towards the right-hander before. Still Strecker, but as they come through the right-hander now, everybody calms down for the time being and everyone get themselves set for the next potential move. As we want Enzo Cantor holds onto the P2 position versus Neil Garner, and Jeff Randall has moved ahead of Nathan Wade as well. So Wade has fallen back a little bit. As you see, the gap to Adam Miles now standing at almost 3 seconds as they make the way into the final third of the lap. But coming on through the carousel, we look back to our driving in the second group in this battle for P6. Indeed, the lead battle's already breaking away. And then we have a second group, and then Sebastian Holmeichel attacking onto this group, along with Gordon Vandenbergen and Titus de Jong a bit further back in P11. But he has dropped Roddy van der Meijden and also Chris Wayne, as we do look from them back up to race leader Adam Miles. And as Miles comes through the right-hander there, we look back into what is their right corner, and we can see it's Enzo Cantor who leads the train, albeit that gap for Miles is just continuing to open up. There are no signs of it slowing down as he continues to push on and looks to make it a 6th successive win. But coming on down on through in towards Whipperman corner gradually. See Cantor here now started to open up a little bit of an advantage in return. It does look as though Cantor is very strong on this second half of the lap, feeling very comfortable with the car. No purple sectors being set so far by Enzo Cantor, albeit of course we do have to keep in mind this is the opening lap, but the point being the fastest man on the GP loop is Jeff Randall. Meanwhile, the fastest driver over the entirety of the Nordschleife loop in general is Adam Miles, albeit there are small bursts where Randall and Atkinson seem to be a bit stronger, but we'll have to wait to see what comes of the second and the third lap. It's very to and fro, but Adam Miles really does have a command of the Nordschleife loop, and that is what's giving him the ability to just run away from the field. As meanwhile we look towards the back of the group here as they make their way through Flansgaard and Heinz, and we can see Vandenbergen just staying very close to the back of Sebastian Holmeichel as we jump on board with the second racing driver from Germany in the number 50. And what everybody here just did a long line. Nobody wants to step out at this point. You touch the grass, it's almost over, unless of course you are Ryan Jackson, who found a way to miraculously get it off the grass. As Vandenbergen there just takes a small dip onto the grass on the left. But as he comes into the braking zone here, heading up into the Schwarz corner, now getting it onto the brakes nice and smoothly here. It's all about getting the momentum off the corner. Can't really look for a move into the Kleiner carousel. It's one wide as they come into left-hand. They go too wide, and then somebody's going to have to miss going into the dip. As they head up towards Galcott corner, this is where slipstream orientated racing begins. In the fact they all head through the right-hander, and now it's flat out all the way in towards Hohenrain and Tiergarten. And they'll start off with Tiergarten, of course, and it's going to be the long charge. But as we look from the onboard from Gordon van den Bergen, we look to Enzo Cantor, and well, Cantor right now not under pressure from Jeff Randall and Neil Gardner, but you can see conversely Gardner and Randall together side by side as they power the way on down. 3 seconds to Adam Miles, and Miles will not be gaining or losing out here with the equality of the cars. They can't change the rear wing on the car, so that means they're all going to have the same maximum top speed. But meanwhile, you can see 3 wide further back, that involves Tufts, Jackson and Holmichael. Holmichael on the left, Tufts on the right, and Jackson in the middle as the camera pans around and pulls them to flip directions. But as they make the way on in towards what is Tiergarten here, they're all closing and getting ready. It's potentially going to be 4 wide, perhaps even 5 wide. Now it's 2 by 2 as they come down, and Tufts here can't find his way on through, or can he? As Jackson parts the seas and gets between them, and Ryan Jackson moves back up to P5 in a brave move there come the end of the first lap, and van den Bergen follows him through. That's 1 lap complete. We've got 2 more to go in this sprint race. It's an absolute thriller right now as they head across the line and on towards lap number 2. But after 1 lap, it is Adam Miles who leads by 3.8 seconds and growing as he sets the first lap of the day, which is a sub 10 minute. Everybody else in excess of 10 minutes. Enzo Cantor is P2, meanwhile fending off Neil Gardner and Jeff Randall in the battle for P2. Then you have your next pack of cars, which is Ryan Jackson P5 ahead of Gordon van den Bergen, with Daniel Tufts looking up his inside. A bit of contact between the two of them there on the side pod, but it looks like they've both survived it for now as Daniel Tufts are looking for the move. Jack Atkinson P8 ahead of Nathan Wade, and Sebastian Holmichael's had a spin, and oh goodness me, into the side of Sebastian Holmichael. It looks like we've had Titus de Jong, so both drivers will lose out in the top 10. They'll fall to P11 and P12 respectively, and Roddy van der Meijden moves up to P10 with Chris Wayne in the pit lane. Hand repair work done to the car, so there's a couple of stories there on the open lap, particularly what happened to Chris Wayne come the end of lap number 1. Here's a replay to explain. As he made his way up into Schwalben Swan's corner, takes a bit too much speed, the rear of the car lets go, and it's a nasty knock to the barrier there, and well, that is going to hurt the rear wing and also the rear right suspension, and Chris Wayne fortunate to get the car back to the pits there and able to take the repair work without having to resort to a tow, which would essentially put him completely out of the race. But then we did have the incident for Sebastian Holmichael afterwards on lap number 2, and this was in the run into the Yokohama S chicane under braking here, very close to the back of Nathan Wade through turn 1. Looks up the inside, and contact there between Holmichael and Wade. I think Wade wouldn't expected Holmichael to go charging in, and then Titus de Jong just comes into the scene of the instant, and nothing he could do. He wouldn't have seen the car. He would have heard there were yellow flags, but I don't think he anticipated the car being pointed sideways on the run beyond the apex tyre barrier of what is turn number 2. But meanwhile, as we return to your live pictures, ladies and gentlemen, we do look up to the battle for P2 once again. And here is the Italian from SLC Bravado Racing, Enzo Cantor, still keeping Neil Gardner at bay as the top 3 in this battle make the way around. Already top 4 are ahead of Gordon van den Bergen. And well, here it's getting very feisty as they go through T13 and on towards the Beach Schmidt curve. And that's Jackson on the inside. Van den Bergen here really extending his muscle and saying, well, I'm happy to take you on outside or inside. And Van den Bergen are really now started to show his mastery of the circuit as they make the way down towards Hatzenbach. But as they come in towards the aforementioned corner sequence, you can see just behind Jackson and Tough staying with him. And meanwhile, Jack Atkinson now at the back of this group, and it is a bit of a deja vu from lap number 1, where Atkinson had to try and make his way on through. But as they sweep out and head in towards Holhaken, coming on through at the right left and then the right left once again. It's all going to be about composure here before the run on towards Flugplatz. We can see there a little bit of smoke being churned up by Van den Bergen as he slides his way out of the Hohaken sequence and up towards Flugplatz he goes by Kudabacher Hohe. But as they head on through the right and kick flat out, Jackson looking up the inside here, and well, it is a dangerous one to go too wide. Van den Bergen takes a bit of grass. Well, I think they're taking quite a liberal use of the grass as he makes his way on through the right hander, and now up towards Nürburgring they go. Meanwhile, Daniel Tufts looking around the outside here, and Tufts showing no signs of hesitation as he tries to power his way on through. Also the same for Nathan Wade, and Wade finding that right now things are not going his way. He wants to be out of this battle and chasing down a podium. As they come up through the left-hander of what is there, the Schroeder Kreuz, and in towards Nürburgring they go. Wade looks up the inside. Oh, goodness me, there's a bit of a moment there for which Jackson and Wade, but particularly for Ryan Jackson. Jackson on the grass, and that causes the field to open up. And what on earth happened to Ryan Jackson there, as meanwhile it's not over yet between Jack Atkinson and Gordon van den Bergen. As they make their way down the hill and in towards the compression, side by side in the long run. Heading in towards the braking zone very shortly, and what can Atkinson do here? He's going to find himself outside to inside as he comes in towards Oudenaar Forst, and well, Van den Bergen gets it done, and well, goodness me, Gordon Van den Bergen right now on his home soil, definitely enjoying the run of the car here, and he is showing no signs of slowing down. If anything, he's only seeming to speed up and become a little bit more aggressive in those defences time and time again. But meanwhile, we do have an opportunity to find out what exactly happened only moments ago to Nathan Wade, and well, here is the replay. It was Nathan Wade and Ryan Jackson, and when we look from Ryan Jackson's perspective, firstly, as they made their way into the corner, can we get a camera angle here? That will be the challenge, was they came down into the corner, under braking, and well, I think it was Gordon Van den Bergen there with a lock-up, which made contact with Ryan Jackson. We take another look at that from Van den Bergen's perspective on board, and well, it got a very nip and tuck here as they made their way into left-hander. Now you're going to see that's Wade on the right, so Van den Bergen comes in behind Jackson. On the brakes he went, and as he did, oh goodness me, contact with Wade, and then that's what kicked off Ryan Jackson, with Van den Bergen then being unsettled by the contact with Wade. Wade surviving that, Ryan Jackson now not surviving it, and that's how it unfolded. A difficult one there for Gordon Van den Bergen. I think that might be a call to the shooter after the race, given the fact there he has really put Ryan Jackson out of the hunt, albeit I say that it may not be so, because Ryan Jackson right now is closing and closing fast. He's already got the gap to Atkinson back down to 1.1 seconds, and the Briton is not being perturbed or dissuaded by the fact he's almost seen the race end before he's finished it. But as he comes up towards Bergvert corner, in the charge he goes right now, and knowing that gap will be closing on down with the slipstream, and of course the slipstream being effective all the way out to about 1.8 seconds, but really starting to be felt around the 1 second mark. So if he can just get a little bit closer, he will have an opportunity to be right there. As we are hearing, there has been a retirement for Sebastian Holmichael, our first retirement of the day, and we'll find out very shortly what happened to Holmichael. But meanwhile, battle is on between Van den Bergen and Atkinson here as they head up towards Mudcurve corner, and as they come all the way through for Kusselchen, it is all about now that confidence, and where you can see that Van den Bergen tuck it back in as they get ready to head into left-hander, albeit they have got the right-hand kick first. Van den Bergen's still there all over the back of Atkinson. I think he's going to wait until they've cleared Mudcurve and heading up towards that Stillstrucker corner instead. Indeed, Atkinson be given the right to hold position. Meanwhile, in the battle for P2, Enzo Cantor still keeping Neil Garner behind as they head in towards the braking zone for Stillstrucker corner now. Jeff Randall has fallen a bit back off of this, and I think there has been a mistake for Randall of some description, because he has seen the deficit between himself and Nathan Wade halved, but in return that deficit's been added on to the gap between himself and Neil Garner and Enzo Cantor, now standing at just shy of 3 seconds, and Nathan Wade is closing on Jeff Randall. As we look back to Randall there in the number 107 machine, can we see any damage on the car? I don't think so. I think the Gonskipping Racing driver may have just had a brief mistake on circuit, and that has cost him dear as he makes his way through posting at 147 and up the hill towards Hoak corner he goes. But as he does, we take a quick look back at what happened to Sebastian Holmichael. We're coming on through now towards Arenberg corner, car sliding, but on the brakes he went here, and I think the car's going to go round on the brake, and it does, and will in the end having to take the car off the road, as Sebastian Holmichael I think decided then to take it to the pits, and will for them to take a look at the car and see what's wrong with it. And I think they've had to retire it due to an issue they've identified on the car, because it just did not look absolutely stable at all. If anything, it looks as though the rear just wanted to continuously come around. But meanwhile, look at your live pictures here, Jeff Randall still falling away from Neil Gardner, and in return, as he loses the rear of the car, coming up towards Bridging corner, but catches it just in time, and Randall there just missing it in terms of losing the car and becoming a YouTube clip, if you will, at the infamous YouTube corner. But meanwhile, as he brings it back together, he is falling closer and closer to Nathan Wade and Daniel Tufts as they make their way for Icebag, and now on towards Flansgarden Irons as they head on down the hill, and Wade will only be motivated more by the fact he can now see Randall, and that gap has come down to 1.5 seconds. But as they go over the jump and through the right-hander into the Stefan Beloff S they go, or Flansgarden Zwei, depending on your preference, as they charge away downhill further. So here it's a flat-out run for Wade. This is all he needs to be able to see the target in front and worry less about Daniel Tufts behind. But Tufts is not worrying about staying close here. In fact, Tufts are really all over the back of Wade as they make the way in towards the Schwalbenschwanz corner very shortly. And then in towards the right-hander they go, which precedes the left onto the brakes. And Meanwhile, the incliner carousel cut out shortly. Wade goes a bit wide. Tufts is going to look for the move here. Almost follows him off circuit. It's too wide into the carousel. But as they come through, Wade there staying out of the carousel. Decides to go wide. That's going to cost him time, but he keeps it on circuit. But Nathan Wade almost seeing his race ended there. And again, it is all about survival. Even in a 3-lap race around here, it feels like an eternity. And indeed, one small moment of complacency, it could cost you very dear. As Jackson, meanwhile, on the recovery drive, is now on the back of Gordon van der Bergen and Jack Atkinson. And now we're going to see the slipstream shenanigans, if you will, down the Dottingham play out. Because, of course, Jackson may be at the back of this pack by the time he goes onto the straight. But meanwhile, by the end of it, he may find himself back at the back of it, or he may find himself at the front or in the middle of it. As you can see there, Atkinson covered off the inside on the right of your picture. And meanwhile, in the foreground, Nathan Wade and Daniel Tufts battling as well, and also Neil Gardner, when he's about to make his way underneath the Bilstein Bridge. Enzo Cantor now trying to come back at him. Of course, Cantor led the pair as they made their way onto the straight. Side by side they go. Further back, we can see that Daniel Tufts and Nathan Wade side by side through the kink. And meanwhile, the same for Gordon van der Bergen and also Brian Jackson, as Atkinson just sits behind. We can tell that Enzo Cantor has got ahead of Neil Gardner once more. And of course, this run not as important as the final run. Meanwhile, Daniel Tufts still behind Nathan Wade, but Brian Jackson is ahead of what is their Gordon van der Bergen, as Adam Miles has gone on to the final lap of racing in the round 17 sprint. And Enzo Cantor, the fastest man out there. He's just gone fastest of everybody, a 9:56.786. I think that may have been aided by some slipstream, but still Cantor trying to push hard. But as we continue to watch the battle here for P7 playing out, it's going to be Gordon van der Bergen in the middle of the road. Atkinson looking into the inside. Jackson on the outside here. Onto the brakes they go. 3 wide into turn 1. The Gomez chicane, of course, it tapers very quickly. Atkinson defends well. Jackson comes into the inside. There's contact as he makes contact with Atkinson there. And in a very similar instant between what was drivers such as what happened to Sebastian Holmichael on the preceding lap, Ryan Jackson gets ahead of Jack Atkinson. I think Atkinson will not be too pleased with how that's played out, as now he finds himself battling with Roddy van der Meyden. And van der Meyden gets ahead of the battle for P9, albeit just as they come through turn 3 and into 4. But coming on down through the right hander, or the forward curve as it's known, we can see there van der Meyden going very deep, and Atkinson will now try and pounce in the run down towards the Dunlop Kera hairpin. Albeit, can he find the inside line? I think he will be able to find it. Onto the brakes they go, and Atkinson all in there, heads onto the anchors. Van der Meyden goes a bit deep, but of course he will get the slingshot run up towards the Michael Schumacher S chicane. Albeit you can see that Van der Meyden immediately pulling back onto the racing line. Atkinson more gradual in his approach to it. I think Van der Meyden really just trying to get into Atkinson's head at this point and trying to get Atkinson to make a mistake, but Atkinson quite resilient as they head up towards the left-hander. As they charge uphill into what would be turn 10 if we're running the standard GP loop here. Proceeding, of course, what is that Bilstein curve? Going on through the left and into the right. Now they go, and well coming through Bilstein. It looks like Atkinson has got this covered off, albeit for a limited period of time, as they head up towards Vidal. Speaking of Vidal, right now the battle for P2 makes its way on through and up towards T13 they go. Cantor slides a little bit deep there, just about picks up the apex curve. Meanwhile, Neil Gardner staying with him. Daniel Tufts has got ahead of Nathan Wade. He's found his way on past quite recently, and I believe that has been in the run onto this lap. He's made the move count and coming on down through the Spin Schmidt curve. All Tufts still there in P5. Nathan Wade, of course, now targeting a P5 finish at best. Remembering, of course, the top 10 of this grid will be inverted for the grid order for the final race of the day, the round 18 feature that's coming up, the 4-lap feature that follows. And will right now, Nathan Wade, if he finishes P6, he'll gain one more place in that. He'll be starting P5. I think for Nathan Wade, he would prefer to finish P5 here, given it's only one place difference, and therefore every point is pivotal. But as they head in towards what is the right-left combination that precedes the run towards Flugplatz, of course, known as what is their Hoheiken. Coming on through the right to left now, and down they go by Kudelbacher. Meanwhile, we're hearing that Neil Gardner's had some connectivity issues, and hopefully that's not a sign of something bigger in terms of that he may have fallen out of the race. And if so, this becomes a battle for P4. Sarniers, it's going to be Wade on the inside versus Tufts. Through the right hand, they go for the Black's corner, and as they do, it's Wade who's ahead now, and Daniel Tufts immediately trying to come back as they make the way up towards what will be Ehrenberg corner, albeit a long run here via Cottonborn. And as they do, we have had confirmation that for Neil Gardner, it looks like it's a retirement, which means that now Enzo Cantor being allowed to run to his own devices. Tufts there with the slipstream, gets ahead of Wade, now heading in towards the Schweden-Cross corner as they come through the left-hander. Tufts there covers the inside line off, and onto the brakes he goes. Meanwhile, further back, Ryan Jackson powers his way on past Gordon van den Bergen. What on earth has happened to Gordon van den Bergen? There's been an insta of some sort for the Sick Racing driver, and well, that was near to disaster. That's meanwhile Roddy van der Meyden and Jack Atkinson can't let one another go in the battle for P8, and well, let's take a look back and find out what exactly happened to Gordon van den Bergen. Well, as they made the way up towards the left-hander of Schroederkreuz, this is Van den Bergen going on in. He turns in side by side with Jackson, and just in the end, goodness me, Van den Bergen drifting his way onto the cross and catching the car somehow. And the Sickhead Racing driver, they're going too wide into the corner, just gave a little bit too much room and gave himself not enough room to make the corner successfully, and that explains the story. Down to P7 with only a 1.5 second gap to Roddy van, in fact a 2.5 second gap, I should correct myself, with regards to Roddy van der Meyden. Could we see a battle for P7 come about in the closing stages of this final lap, because the battles are coming down now, albeit I say that Jack Atkinson is still trying to prove a point versus Van der Meyden in the battle for P8, albeit Atkinson being made to wait here as we see Van der Meyden sliding his way on through. You can see there a little bit of a drift coming on through for Van der Meyden, albeit keeps it together that time as they come on through the right hand of Callenhard, and now down towards Dreifeld Rex they go by Spiegel Curve, and as they come on through the left into right here, it is all about momentum at this point. You want to carry as much speed from apex to apex with Dreifeld Rex, the free right-hander, and as they come up towards the run to Versailles, and now Atkinson there, but not close enough to try and look for the move. But meanwhile, we look to Daniel Tufts and Nathan Wade. This battle for P4, it continues to stay ever close as they come into the bridge section of Bridgeside, and up towards Exwheeler they go. And Tufts, they're getting the better exit out of Bridgeside, but as they make the way out of Exwheeler and now down towards Burbank Corner, you can see Wade getting the greater momentum by comparison as we ride on board and look back from Daniel Tufts' car. Now powering the way into the braking zone here. Wade won't look for the move initially. He'll wait for the run out of Bergberg because it is a long run up towards the mid-curve corner, and that's where he can strike. Albeit Tufts getting a much better run initially there, but again, Wade can be playing this tactically because he will gain that half a second that he's let the gap open up to. He'll gain that plenty more by the time they get to the mid-curve corner. So it's all about giving yourself the right time and distance to strike. It's not just about being close, it's about being the right distance in terms of that closeness and carrying the speed on through. And you can see now Wade is getting closer and closer. He's going to be made to look round the outside here as they head in towards the right-hand kink. And where it's Wade who gets a nose-head. Tufts there on the outside through the kink, inside in towards mid-curve corner. But in the end, it relinquishes the position and decides it's not enough to go too wide, or is it? He thinks about it. I think in the end, the temptation, he does not fall for it as they come through the long left and now head up towards the braking zone for Steel Strecker corner. And as they do, you can see Jeff Randall only almost 2 seconds up the road, albeit they are closing on Randall little by little. So Randall could be falling back into this battle. He's currently P3, is the one who's gone skipping racing driver. But both Wade and Tufts want to get closer before this race is said and done as they head up towards the carousel. But as they do and get ready to go back, battling on the brakes. Meanwhile, we look back to Ryan Jackson, who in P6 is gradually breaking away from Gordon van der Bergen. And meanwhile, further back, that's Jack Atkinson, who has found his way past Roddy van der Meyden, albeit that battle for P8 still ever threatening. But meanwhile, it's a mistake there for Roddy van der Meyden. He carries too much speed into the carousel. He doesn't make the dip, and that is going to cause the gap to open up to almost 1.6 seconds as they make the way up towards Poston 147, and that could be that battle said and done. As meanwhile, we look from them back to Nathan Wade versus Daniel Tufts, and Wade is still ahead as they now begin the downhill descent, heading in to Whipperman shortly, albeit Hedwig's Hire first. And as they come down through Hedwig's Hire now, Whipperman will be the sweeping right. They make it on through, albeit Tufts there gets it wrong. It's not a whack to the wall, but it's a run onto the grass stand as he rejoins Tufts 9. That's going to cost him 5 tenths as a minimum as he comes down for X-Back and in towards Brinsham Curve shortly. And now for Daniel Tufts, I think it's all about just keeping it on the road. I think at this point that may just break the charge, albeit then Wade makes a similar mistake and Nathan Wade rejoins coming into Brunshan, and both drivers there pushing too hard towards the end. They both want this P4. They also both want to hunt down Jeff Randall, but Randall in return is leaving them behind with a gap of 3 seconds. And I think for Wade and Tufts now, they will be locked into this battle for P4 until the very end. And for Wade in particular, I think he'll be cursing himself now for the simple reason he's given Tufts an opportunity to get back in down the Doxinger High straight. albeit the gap being this close. I think Wade will not mind that because, of course, he let Tufts get ahead initially and then try and come back in. But Tufts might be strategic on the slipstream and decide to lift off initially and only go for the pounce once they make their way past the Bilstein Bridge. But Tufts looking left, looking right here as they come down the Steffen Baloff S. And meanwhile, heading on through the picture goes Jeff Randall, but he's not going to be looking behind, he's going to be looking forward. If he looks behind, he'll see two Titans of the field battling hard in for position. But Tufts all over the back of Wade, can't find a way through it at the moment. Wade there makes it safely on through. The left hand of Schwalben-Schwanz in towards the Kleiner Carousel they go. Wade last time dropped it here, but he hasn't dropped it this time. And as they make their way out towards Gallencott corner, Tufts there pulls out the toe. I think he's just trying to open the gap up a little bit so that way he gets the perfect slipstream out of Gallencott and onto the Dottinger Straight. Takes a bit of grass as well, and that is going to compromise his line. It's going to compromise his speed. And Wade now with a 6.5 tenth gap. Well, that gap will gradually come down as Tufts gains more and more speed on this final stretch. Meanwhile, race leader Adam Miles making his way on down with a 5-second advantage over Enzo Cantor in P2. It's then going to be 7 seconds between Cantor and Jeff Randall back in P3, but meanwhile for the podium finishers, or expected podium finishers, it's going to be Wade versus Tufts. Tufts looks around the outside initially, Wade tucks back in, they get ready to head underneath the bridge, and as they do, well, now it's all about coming back for Wade, and can he find enough time in the day to be able to do so? Well, we do have to look from them, ladies and gentlemen, because right now, making his way through the final couple of corners, it was a flawless run to pole position in qualifying, and it's been a flawless start to the day for Adam Miles, who makes it 6 wins in succession. He will be your winner in what is the round 17 sprint here at the Nürburgring in Germany by a margin of 5 seconds to the end, ahead of Enzo Cantor, who comes on home at P2 there for SLC Bavano Racing. And then the podium will be rounded out shortly by Jeff Randall, who comes to line P3 for Gonskipping Racing. Nathan Wade was able to find the P4 ahead of Daniel Tufts as they come together there across the finish line, having already completed the race. Ryan Jackson P6, Jack Atkinson holds off Gordon van den Bergen at the end for P7, Vandenbergen P8 and Roddy van der Meiden P9 ahead of Titus de Jong, who will finish P10 as he comes to the timing line there for RT Racing. We then do have what is approximately a minute before Chris Wayne will finish this race down in P11, but we had the two retirements of Neil Garner and Sebastian Hallmichael, two unfortunate retirements, but Chris Wayne right now making his way down the Dottinger Straight, and that gives us an opportunity to take a look at how Nathan Wade made the pass back on Daniel Tufts of P4. As they made their way through Tiergarten into the Hohenrhein complex here, going on to the brakes, and Wade on the inside outside, a bit of contact between the two of them, and more elbows out, but in the end Wade again it done. Although I think Tufts will feel as though he was elbowed a bit too much, but that's how Wade got the P4. And as we return to your live pictures, ladies and gentlemen, making his way through Hohenrhein corner to complete his race, Chris Wayne will be best of the rest, and with it the final finisher on the lead lap, P11 of 13. The Gonskipping Racing driver having come into qualifying very late in the day, keeping his head in it to win it, and brings on home a P11 there. It just misses out on reverse grid pole, which will go to Titus de Jong. But with that, of course, that's our first race of the day complete. And now we get set for the build-up to race number 2. And well, as we get ready for it, of course, we do have a 5-minute breather. And let's take you through those race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries. Well, after 3 laps of racing in the round 17 sprint here in Germany at the Nürburgring Gesamtstrecke in the 2023 Gonskipping Racing at Skip Barber Challenge Trophy, sponsored by Musical Money, Adam Miles takes the win in the end by 5 seconds over SRC Movano Racing's Enzo Cantor. Miles just seemed to be in a world of his own after being under a bit of pressure in the run to turn number 1. He never looked back, and Enzo Cantor having to fight hard for P2, but finding a way to get 1 step ahead of Jeff Randall, albeit with Neil Garner battling him hard, and it would be an unfortunate retirement for Neil Gardner, what would see Enzo Cantor take the P2 and never look back on it. Jeff Randall, P3 there for Gonskipping Racing, 8 seconds further behind, but he'll be pleased with a podium. It's been some time since we've seen him on the podium in the 107 machine. And then Nathan Wade, P4, just fending off Daniel Tufts, albeit getting very close between the two of them on the final lap. But it's understandable, of course, with it being the final lap battle, it's always going to get nip and tuck. And then Daniel Tufts completing your top 5 in the number 34. And definitely, I think for Tufts, we're expecting more of the same from him. An absolute charger out of the box in race conditions. Ryan Jackson, P6. An unfortunate instant midway through the race saw him drop out of the fight for a top 5 finish, but still Jackson doing well to recover for P6, and we expect plenty more for him when he starts P5 in the next race, with Jack Atkinson at P7 there, and just fended off Gordon van den Bergen by 4 attempts come the finish line, with van den Bergen finishing at P8 for Sickhead Racing, and then Roddy van der Meyden for STN ahead of Titus de Jong for RT Racing, who complete your top 10, and that will mean that Titus de Jong will start on reverse grid pole for the round 18 feature. We then see behind them Chris Wayne by a further what was just shy of a minute, and the Gone Skipping Racing drive finishing our drives on the lead lap with a lap down at retirement for Neil Garner, P12, and then finishing 2 laps down, and as a result I think will be classified as he did not finish as he wasn't able to complete over half the race distance, the privateer of Sebastian Hollmichael with that unfortunate incident at Arenberg Corner. But that concludes your first race of the day, ladies and gentlemen, and we do have 3 minutes before our next race, and as our drivers get set, we do look to them making their way around in this practice warm-up session. Adam Miles just gradually cruising his way on around, and he does. We do take a quick sip of water, and then we are trying to get a patch through to one of our drivers. As we say hello to Neil Garner in the YouTube chat there. And I think a little bit frustrated with the dropout of race number 1. And it does sound like it may have been a technical issue. Indeed, we can get confirmation that unfortunately disconnected, but we do hope to see him back out on circuit in the second race of the day, given the fact that Neil Garner going very strong. And I think we may be able to just get a quick word from Jeff Randall and his perspective on finishing on the podium. And it's been some time since we've seen him up there, as we do try to bring him in to a patch through line. And as in fact we patch through to Jeff Randall. Jeff, are you there?
I am indeed. Hello, Paul.
Well, good evening to you, Jeff, and what a way to start off your evening. P3 in race number 1. It looked hard out there, but you found your way back onto the podium.
Yeah, loads and loads of mistakes. Disappointed I lost Enzo and Neil, of course. Yeah, disappointed I lost those 2 guys, but then mistake after mistake, but just managed to hang on. And then with Neil's internet dropping out, it was unlucky. Yeah, happy with 3rd.
We need a great drive out there, and with one more race to go shortly, we're looking at 4 laps. Can you make it a double podium?
I'll be giving it my very best. I'll have to be a lot more consistent, though.
Well, we wish you all the best luck in the second race of the day. And in fact, one final question we have to ask. What's your favourite part of the Nürburgring?
Oh, crikey, that's a tough question. I don't know the name of the corner, but it's a left-right section going downhill into a tight right and then tight left braking zone. I have no idea what it's called, but I love it. Does that give you any clues?
I'll have to have a think about it. I think I'll put it out to the broadcast chat, see if they can figure it out. But good luck for the second race.
Thanks, Paul.
So hearing there from Jeff Randall, and we'll give us a little bit of a riddle, ladies and gentlemen. See if you can work out the section of the circuit he's referring to in terms of his favourite section. It is a left-right into a very tight right-hander going downhill, and we'll feel free to place your guesses. If I had to take a guess at what he's referring to, then I think he might be referring to the run through Hedwig's Hut into Whipperman Corner. Alternatively, it's the run. Well, in fact, it wouldn't be the run for Eisbach into Wünschen. In fact, it could be as well, because that's a left-right into a tight right-hander. But I think it might be more Whipperman. But we'd have to see. But always good to hear from Jeff, and always sounding positive, albeit now looking to just try and keep his head screwed on for the second race of the day. But we'll have to see whether he's able to pull it off or not. And well, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to head to the grid for the round 18 feature. And this is how our drivers will line up for the second race of the day. It's Titus de Jong who takes reverse grid pole for RT Racing, with STN's Roddy van der Meyden starting at P2. Gordon van den Bergen starts P3 on the second row of the grid for Sickhead Racing, and he is joined in company by Jack Atkinson, who starts P4. It's then Ryan Jackson starting P5, the privateer, who has the company of Daniel Tufts alongside him P6. And then further down the grid, it will be Nathan Wade at P7 on the fourth row of the grid, joined by Jeff Randall for Gone Skipping Racing. The fifth row to complete the top 10, it's Enzo Cantor from SRC Movano Racing and the privateer Adam Miles. Of course, your race winner in race number 1, and he'll be looking to make it back-to-back victories to make it 7 wins on the bounce, with Chris Wayne for Gonskipping Racing starting P11 ahead of Neil Garner P12, and Sebastian Holmark will be starting at P13 as we can see him there on the 7th and final row of the grid. So 13 starters once again, and we've got approximately a minute before we go racing, and well, who is going to come away winner in the feature? Of course, we do have the expectation of a potential pit stop for our drivers, or very likely pit stop for our drivers, as they all get themselves comfortably set on the grid. But will anybody dare to try and go the entire race without putting some extra fuel in the car? I think if we were at a shorter circuit, it may be beneficial to do so, but with the circuit here being so long and the lap time being 10 minutes approximately, I wonder whether there would be value in doing so, given the fact the refuel time of these cars is quite short by comparison. But of course, our drivers will have a plan in mind, they'll know what they're doing, and when we get ready to go racing, of course, and not long to go before we see lights out and away for the second and final race of the day. We are just waiting for Sebastian Holmichael to make his way up to the back of the grid, and it will be to Titus de Jong to take us racing. And well, as our drivers all get set, of course, for de Jong, it's about trying to hold on in the run through the GP loop and then make the car as wide as possible over the Nordschleife loop. For Roddy van der Meijden, it's all about the run off the line into turn 1 and try to get the move done. But keep your eyes on Gordon van den Bergen starting P3, but here are the lights. Red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights down, away we go. It's a quick start here, but can Titus de Jong make a quick start off the line? He bogs down a little bit, but Roddy van der Meijden as well. Look out behind for Jack Atkinson, and also Gordon van der Bergen trying to cut around as they make their way into the braking zone here for turn number 1, the Yokohama chicane. It's always a place for early moves, and as they make their way on through, instead of Gordon van der Bergen goes around the outside of van der Meijden. Meanwhile, he gets very close to the apex, 3 wide, going on through, and that is Atkinson, Jackson, and Tufts. They all survive it. I don't know how they managed to do it, but they've done it. And as they make their way out towards turn number 3, brilliant class of racing there from all 3 of them, and then they go through wide, but it all unfolds. There is what is a bit of contact between Atkinson and Jackson, albeit I think Atkinson getting it slightly wrong on turning with cold tyres, and then Jackson just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But as Randall here tries to find a way on through, gets squeezed off the roadbed by Jackson, keeps 2 wheels on the road surface, but I think he'll be hoping he's given a little bit more room now as they make the way into the Dunlop Kera hairpin. Onto the brakes they go. Randall looking for the way around the outside. You see the cold tyres, they're causing the car to slip out on corner entry, but he keeps it together, and this could be a really nice move in the run up towards the Schumacher chicane, albeit still too wide. But now Randall's got a nose ahead, and as they go on in, Jeff Randall makes it count there. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, Van den Bergen looking around the outside here versus Titus de Jong. De Jong having a slow X out of the Schumacher S, and Van den Bergen covering him off. Meanwhile, Van der Meijden gets on through as well as the top 3 make their way out towards the Bilstein curve, and coming on through the right-hander now. Everybody's seemingly calming down at the front. Meanwhile, in the mid-pack, it's anything but calm as Randall trying to make a bit more progress, but Jackson right there to try and pounce once more as they head on through the right-hander and up towards the Vidal chicane. But powering up the hill and all the way in the charge here, all of our drivers now starting to look for one more major overtaking opportunity. It's Vidal, and as they head in towards the braking zone, Van den Bergen covering off there. Van der Meijden, that gets very close. In fact, I could have seen the front wing coming off of Van der Meijden's car if they weren't careful about it. Meanwhile, Daniel Tubbs holds it to P5 on the back of Atkinson, with Randall falling back a little bit as they turn through turn 13 and on towards the Speen Schmidt curve. But into Nordschleife loop they go then, and as they all come down, we look to the back of the field, and Neil Garner, who we ride on board with here, with Sebastian Holmichael's car not being repaired in the time for this race of the day, and therefore it does mean that we've got a 12 car field and we've only seen 12 starters. But as they come down and through into the first quarter sequence, of course, of West Hampstead back into Hoheiken corner. Right now for Neil Garner, he's got to pick his way through little by little, or will he? Will he just simply stay with the pack and decide to play it smart? Adam Miles has not made any progress since the start of the race. He's still P10. Nathan Wade at P9 at the moment. Lost out for Senzo Cantar, and Wade's gone wide there as he rejoins in the run into Woodard's Hoheiken corner. Miles around the outside of him, and Miles gets it done to move into P9. It's an early mistake from Wade, and as they power their way through Quiddleback on up towards Floodlights. Right now, everybody in the long charge, as we can see. Neil Garner looks around the outside of Chris Wayne. 1 place to be gained already as he heads into the right-hander of Floodlights, and as they come on through. Meanwhile, we do look up to Titus de Jong, and we bring the battle box up in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen to keep track of who's who as they charge their way up towards Arenbo corner. Matt Atkinson here on the inside versus de Jong. and in towards the lift-off they'll go for what is there, the Schwedenkreuz corner. It's going to get very nip and tuck, but they both decide to back it off respectively with De Jong settling for P4. Meanwhile, behind them, Randall versus Daniel Tufts. Randall up the inside for P5. Tufts on the outside. He can't quite find the move. He looks at the cutback off the corner, and as they come on down, where it is going to be a long charge all the way in towards the compression, and for Randall really trying to come on strong here. He's going for it. I think that podium has just given him so much confidence in the car as they make their way into the compression. Tufts still right behind him, but of course for Randall, he'll want to try and catch up to the back of De Jong before Atkinson's able to break away, because if Atkinson's able to get away, that does mean the pack starts to segregate, and therefore the opportunity to siphon fuel saving via slipstream becomes ever more pressing. But we have heard there's been an incident for Neil Gardner, and where he's had to be towed to the pits. So the same for Ryan Jackson. We'll take a look back at what's happened there very shortly. We may have two more drivers out of this race already, but meanwhile, looking to the front of the field, Gordon van den Bergen holds, he makes his way through Metzgersfeld corner, and in towards Callan Hardy goes gradually here as he comes into the downhill right-hander now, and we can see that post 106, the marshal's post on the entry, and as they come through the right, Van den Bergen keeps it comfortable as he holds on to lead this race, and they all charge their way down towards dry front brakes. But as they do, we have an opportunity to take a look back at what exactly happened to Ryan Jackson only a few months ago. Oh, goodness me, it's a nasty knock to the wall there for Jackson, and where is that? That's at Flugplatz, and the car's come across the road. There's contact with Adam Miles, and in the end, Neil Garner just cannot get a break today. Technical issue in race number 1, saw retirement, and now in race number 2, coming into the scene in the instant, and Ryan Jackson, goodness me. As we take a look back here at what happened to Jackson in terms of the full length of it, just carries a bit too much speed to the Flugplatz, a nasty knock to the wall, and then the car just grinds along. And well, for Neil Gardner, he'll see this car just going wayward. I don't think Jackson can get it a stop, as he just in the end found himself in the middle of the road, and also a bit of an off-road there for one of the other drivers as well. And I believe that was Chris Wayne having to take evasive action. But meanwhile, it does look as though Adam Miles, he may have picked up some damage, but he's not given up as the drivers make their way on round through Bergvert. We're on live pictures once again as they start to make the way uphill. Well, right now you've got the top 7 only separated with what is a margin of 1.6 seconds, if that, as now Van der Meyden and Van der Bergen are all trying to come together here, and Van der Meyden going around the outside initially. This will set him up on the inside in towards what will be the kink, the Formant curve, but as he takes the lead and puts the car in the middle of the road, well, now Van der Bergen will try and come back at him. Meanwhile, look at Cancer in the rear of the picture taking his way out of the tow, as we've got a little bit of side-by-side starting to go between Randall. It's 3 wide at the back of the group. Surely they're not going to go 3 wide into Book Curve corner. That would be crazy to say the least, but they go 2 by 2. It's 3 pairs of 2 in towards Book Curve corner. They go on through, and as they make their way up towards what will be Stillstrecker corner shortly, they all survive it. I cannot believe my eyes there. It's Skippies at their finest as they come through the right-hand kick and in towards the braking zone, and Jeff Randall takes the lead of this race, albeit with Tufts and Van der Meyden right behind him. Tufts trying to follow Randall through. Van der Meyden being given the elbow out. They've been made to go wide, and as they come out the corner up towards the Caracotta Carousel they go, and well, who now is going to dare to look for a move? It's here. I don't think anybody will. I think they will settle down for a brief moment. Daniel Tufts following Randall everywhere, and I think trying to use Randall as a pace car, where he almost goes launching himself out of the race there by getting it wrong, coming out of the carousel, and will hold on to P2, but I can't imagine that's going to be healthy for the suspension as they head through Boston 147 and coming through the left-hander and up towards what will be a right corner shortly. Well, Van der Meyden just staying right there in P3, not making any further progress back up the order, but still at the same time not losing the top 2. But you can see Randall already trying to break away here, trying to give himself an advantage. And I think for Randall it may be about taking that pit stop and seeing how much of a gap he can put in before the likes of, say, Adam Miles, or alternatively Nathan Wade, are able to pick their way on through or try to leapfrog via fuel saving. Of course, there are multiple ways you can try and approach the race. We've seen it in the previous feature races earlier on in the season. Some try to go all in, some decide to really prioritise fuel saving, and some in a middle ground. The more fuel saving you do, of course, the less time you spend in the pit, and you try to leapfrog drivers who've not been able to save as much fuel. But the opposite is true in terms of if you're the leader and you're able to break weight and use some extra fuel, you may have to spend longer in the pits. But if you gain a big enough gap and avoid the fighting behind, then you may naturally re-inherit the lead when it's all said and done strategy. But meanwhile, off track there, I believe that was Van der Meyden alternating Van den Bergen. In fact, I think it was Van den Bergen getting it wrong, as Van der Meyden coming on down the hill now through Flansgarden Irons in towards the jump, and through the right hand they go with all the Steffen Bell Belofest. Everybody staying together here, and well, right now the average speed of these cars around the lap maybe in the region of 100 miles an hour. But I can tell you one thing, whether it's 100 or 200 miles an hour, these guys are giving it everything in order to stay with the leader as Randall continues to open up a further lead. Meanwhile, side by side here, this is going to get very dip and tuck as Van der Meyden backs out. Randall's into the wall. Randall's hit the wall coming on through the Steffen Belofest, and it's all over for Randall as the wheels come off, and for Van der Meyden the car's going slowly. I think he may have picked up a slowdown there for running wide. We'll have to take a look back at shortly what happened, but my goodness, it's all unfolded in a very short instance of time. And as Tufts makes his way through the Kleiner carousel, well, right now he finds himself in the high pressure position of being the leader of this race. And what I can tell you that Adam Miles and Nathan Wade are now on the back of this group, so we still do have the top 7 together, albeit for one moment it was what was a top 9 together, and now Tufts making his way on down as Van der Meyden has had to be towed to the pits. So has Randall, of course. Understandably for Randall, I think for Van der Meyden he's got suspension damage. The car may have just come apart as he made his way through the Steffen Belofest. We'll take a look back at that very shortly, because 2 race-defining moments there, no doubt about it, on this open lap. Indeed, we have had a crazy first lap in this race. It was quite a sedate sprint, but now it's a full-force feature, and as they make the way past the Touristenfahren entry point there, you can see it's 2 by 2 as they come down the Dottinger Straight. Will be a bit of bump drafting going on here. Enzo Cantor being pushed forward into lead by Jack Atkinson. Well, they've got to be careful, of course, because bump drafting in cars that are open cockpit and open world is very tricky to do. But as they make the way up towards what is the Hohenrain-Tiergarten complex, we can see there Van der Bergen defending hard through Tiergarten, holds on to lead, and Enzo Cantor falls back into P2. I think Cantor won't be too incensed at this point. His focus will be on just simply run this race right. Will we see anybody peel off into the pits from the end of the first lap? And we do. We see 2 drivers in, 3 drivers in, and that is Tufts, Miles, and also Nathan Wade. They decide to go for the undercut strategy here, and will it work out in their favour? We'll have to wait and see. But meanwhile, after 1 lap, it is Gordon Van der Bergen who leads ahead of Enzo Cantor P2 by a margin of 2 tenths. Onto the brakes into the Yokohama S chicane they go, and behind them a further couple of tenths back it is Jack Atkinson. We then have P4 Titus de Jong ahead of what is Chris Wayne, who's just crossed the timing line, picked up P5, with the fact that as Chris Wayne comes on down towards turn number 1 in the pits, we do have Daniel Tufts, Adam Miles, and also Nathan Wade. And in fact, Adam Miles leaves the pit lane before the other 2 drivers, so he returns to field P6. Meanwhile, Daniel Tufts P7 just ahead of Nathan Wade, and we have only got 8 drivers in this race currently, with 3 in the pits and repair work done to the cars of Rody van der Meyden, Jeff Randall, and Neil Gardner. And we also had an out or a retirement for Ryan Jackson and Sebastian Holmichael on the opening lap. Sebastian Holmichael not able to make it onto the circuit due to issues with the car, and for what was Ryan Jackson, that early instant coming out of Flugplatz or through Flugplatz for him into the wall, cost him very dear. Meanwhile, for Neil Garner being caught up in the aftermath of that instant, coming into the careening car of what was Ryan Jackson, and therefore having the repair work done. And we've just had an instance of both Jeff Randall and Rody van der Meyden. I'm going to take a look back and find out what exactly happened to them, starting with Jeff Randall. Riding on board here, and a little bit of knock on the curves, and I think this may have unsettled the car. In fact, that's the one that did it, the 3rd curve. Coming on down, you can see the front left suspension taking a huge hit, and that was at the end of Jeff Randall's run in the lead. And after trying to break away and was pushing it so hard for so long, as we return to live pictures, and coming in towards the Vidal chicane, Van der Bergen versus Enzo Cantor, and will Cantor there holding the lead now as he's made the move in towards the chicane, and they make the way onto the Nordschleife loop for the 2nd time of asking. But as Randall's already left the pit lane, and Van der Meyden starting to make his way back out to the circuit as well. Let's take a look back at what happened to Rody van der Meyden, because this one is a little bit more complex. Well, as we look to Van der Meyden riding on board here, now he does ride one of the curves, and I think that may have been it. Just literally tapping that curve was enough to damage the suspension. In fact, it was. The car's just gone. I think he's just... Still got some speed going, so whatever's happened to Rody van der Meyden as he comes up into the left-hander. Well, I'm not quite sure what's happened to Van der Meyden. He has had to go into pits. Oh, in fact, coming through the Kleiner carousel, and that's the story. So I think where he may have cut some of the track limits earlier on in the run downhill, it was a slowdown penalty he was serving, and then just getting it wrong at the Kleiner Carousel. Well, who would have thought it? The Dutchman there, we thought he had followed in a similar fashion to Jeff Randall, perhaps broken the suspension, but in the end, it was the Kleiner Carousel which saw him just ejected too early and finding haste to the outside wall. But indeed, two drivers there with major incidents, and now back on circuit will be a lap down. And meanwhile, we look back to your live pictures, and the lead of this race, it's Enzo Cantor ahead of Vandenbergen with Atkinson P3. And as they make the way up towards Arenberg corner, well, right now nose to tail as the sun shines once again. We've had a bit of cloud come over the circuit in between the races, we should point out, and that has changed the visuals of the circuit. And what do we mean by that? Well, of course, when you're racing in the sunshine, and particularly when you do have quite a prominent sun like we have now, you do have quite significant shadows fall over the circuit with the tree lines and whatnot, and that could potentially mask certain braking zones or change the way you look at braking zones. Conversely, of course, when you've just got cloud and the circuit's a bit darker, and you could just focus more and more on your landmarks around rather than worrying about the shadows, because of course shadows not reliable braking markers, given the fact that shadows do move, they come and go. But as we see Cantor, Vandenbergen and Atkinson still leading. Meanwhile, Daniel Tufts there found his way past Nathan Wade in the run out of look flags, but now a mistake there for Ehrenberg is going to see Wade have an opportunity to come back. Adam Miles, meanwhile, has bought himself clear track. He's seen them go through the camera. And as they do, going through the camera shot, it is Adam Miles right now who's absolutely charging in P6. I think his attempt to the undercut will be to leapfrog his way into the lead of the race when we do see the top 5 come into the pits in due course. Now, will they come in on lap 2 or will it be lap number 3? Well, we do know they've got the fuel tanks to do 3 laps. We saw that in the first race of the day. So it will be at the end of lap 3 is the latest they can pit. And of course, they will need to pit at that point unless anybody thinks they're able to do enough fuel saving to go all the way to the end. But to put it in perspective, we did see a stationary pit time of 8.78 seconds to Adam Miles. For Nathan Wade, it was 10.2, and for Daniel Tufts, it was 10.9. So therefore, all 3 drivers with different approaches, and I think Adam Miles really banking on pushing hard on this lap and lap number 3, and then having a bit of a lift and coast lap on the final lap in order to save the fuel to get him to the end, unless he's played his cards right from the outset. But Miles does normally go all in when it comes to racing and just puts in the fuel he needs to get the race done in the end. We've spoken to it previously, but as the drivers make their way for drive flat Rex, Daniel Tufts right now staying behind Nathan Wade but not able to get closer. And I think for Tufts here, it's all about just following Wade up into the next battle. There's a lock up for Wade, sliding his way through their siphon, keeps it just pointed on the straight and narrow right now, but both drivers here really pushing hard. They're both trying to catch back up to Miles and also trying to make sure they leapfrog their way back into the battle for what would effectively be, if our prediction is correct, the battle for P2 in this race. But meanwhile, we've had a bit of a change up front. We've had Enzo Cantor fall off the circuit, and Gordon Vandenbergen now holds the lead ahead of Jack Atkinson, with Titus Young a further 3 seconds behind. And then it's going to be Enzo Cantor, who is a further 8 seconds off and going quite slowly. What's happened to Enzo Cantor? Well, he's had a poor run from Bergwerk. I think that's where it's all happened. And we can take a look back. We've got a replay. Well, this is into Bergwerk corner. The car slides initially, and as it does, it goes up onto the exit curve. And well, the rear let's go in as he tries to bring it back together, and a nasty knock to the inside barrier there as he tries to get the car turned around. But look at the suspension. It has taken a nasty knock, and I think for Cantor, if he can get that car back to the pits, it's going to save him a lot of time. But it is going to be a painful run for the SRC Bravado racing driver, who is pushing so hard for Bergwerk, and where it's a very easy mistake to make. You just push too hard and the car comes round on that exit curve. As we look back to live pictures, we look to Gordon Vandenbergen versus Jack Atkinson, and this is the battle for the lead on circuit, but we believe it may be the battle for P2. Alternatively, depending on how Tufts and Wade fit into this mixture, it may be a battle for P4 instead. But speaking of Wade versus Tufts, here they are as they make their way into the steel stretcher, and will Wade getting ahead of Tufts once more. And these two are not giving up on either driver, in the fact they're both giving everything here to stay ahead. As Wade goes a bit wide, they're coming out of steel stretcher. And as he does, we makes Tufts have to take a bit of a curb in there in the run into the carousel. And well, Tufts mate that's going very late. That's not going to help the front right suspension with the way it's had to drop off of the entry point and in to the carousel complex as they make the way up to post 147. These two really not giving it any quarter to one another right now. It is becoming quite brutal in the way they're back and forth. But to be fair, they love it. They love the racing, and we love them for it as they make the way up the hill and in towards Hoat corner. Further behind, we're hearing that Neil Gardner has found his way past Roddy Vandermeer in the battle for P10. Remembering, of course, they're a lap down effectively on the field now, so we would expect they're only going to complete 3 laps of racing compared to the rest of the field's 4, given the tow they had to make to the pits early on. But meanwhile, as Wade and Tufts calms down for a brief moment, we look back to your leaders here as they start to power their way down Flansgaard and Irons and charge it on down at Van der Bergen. Still keeping Atkinson at bay as we jump on board with Jack Atkinson as he makes his way over the jump and through the right hand at Nansen Steffen Bellof S or Flansgaard and Zwei. And as he heads on down here, well, I think it's all about just doing some fuel saving and tucking in behind Van den Bergen and trying to save the fuel so that way he can potentially take the lead of the race down the Dottingerhöhe Straight. But of course, every litre he saves right now, he saves time in the pits, but I wonder how much time he's losing to those who have already pitted as he comes on through and up towards the left-hander of Schwalden Swans. And coming through the left-hander, you can see Van den Bergen just taking a bit too much speed, and Atkins almost following him onto the exit curve as they come on through the kind of carousel. Left-hander to go, and as they do, both spitting the cars out of the corner, keeping it well within limits as we're hearing Daniel Tufts had an off-track in the run down through Flansgaard and Irons. We'll try and take a look back at what exactly has happened to him shortly, but he has fallen off the back of Nathan Wade. In fact, there's a tow to the pits for Daniel Tufts, so it has been a race-ending potentially incident for Tufts unless they can get that car repaired. Because now coming out of Golf corner, and as he powers his way up into top gear, this is where he'll just gradually look to take the lead of this race off of Van den Bergen. Van den Bergen will look to come back at him, there's no doubt about it, as it's the long distance camera shot here from post 193 as they make the way on past. And as they do in the charge, it is a very long run in the day as the sun continues to make its way across the sky, and we're heading in towards what is there, the Bilstein Bridge curve as they come into left-hander very shortly. Both drivers giving it everything, but Van den Bergen now trying to come back as he looks up the inside here into the kink. And downhill they charge. They make their way in towards Tiergarten and Hohenrain. But it is going to be Van den Bergen who stays ahead now. And Atkinson not putting up too much of a defence there. I think just doing what he needs to in terms of making sure they manage their speed, they carry the momentum, and he saves a little bit of fuel in the long process. But coming out of Hohenrain and now on towards the start-finish straight, we're going to see Van den Bergen comes into the pits, and so does Atkinson. Atkinson does not want to be without a draft partner as they make the way on through. And Atkinson overtakes under braking there to the limiter line. Well, I think in the end Van den Bergen just reacting a bit too soon. Atkinson meanwhile knowing he can brake a bit later, Tita de Jong follows them in, and as they all come on down now down pit row, well, who is going to be the leader of this race as Enzo Cantor of course struggles his way into the pit lane, but he's made it. And Chris Wayne will stay out, and Chris Wayne is going to lead a lap of the race today, albeit I think he's going to go on to leading a lap, but for how long is the question as he makes his way across the timeline. And right now behind him, well, we are waiting to see, that's Adam Miles coming up behind, and out of the pits comes Gordon Van den Bergen, and as they charge their way into turn 1, Adam Miles P2, he's effective leader now, Atkinson in P3, Nathan Wade comes on down, and Wade has managed to jump ahead of what's Gordon Van den Bergen, but not ahead of Atkinson, so that's fighting with Daniel Tufts, has coughed Nathan Wade quite significantly. He's currently P3, effective versus what is Chris Wayne, who's out there on circuit, and Wayne will do one more lap and he'll try and lead it all the way to the end. But as they make the way on down through turns 3 and 4, Nathan Wade right now will go hunting after Jack Atkinson with 2 laps remaining, and Gordon Van den Bergen comes out 2 seconds behind with Titus de Jong a further, I do believe a further 3.5 seconds back. Whilst we do have a breather, ladies and gentlemen, we take a look back to what exactly happened to Daniel Tufts. Was he's making his way through the left hand. Oh my goodness, and the car already up in there. You look at the front left suspension as he came on through. We'll try and take a look further back at how that played on out, and in fact we will catch this from the run. In fact, we've gone a bit too far back, I believe. We've gone up towards Klosterol into what was the run into mid-curve corner, so we will instead look back at it from the run previously and coming on down in towards the braking zone. In fact, no, this is the replay of Nathan Wade coming back through the kink into a steel striker corner. And well, these two battling hard, of course, and not giving an inch with one another. But then as we take a look back to what happened to Daniel Tufts and we ride on board with him, and the car in the end just being upset. You can see that where he took too much apex curb, and now it's in the run into Flansgarden Irons, and the front left just being lifted. I think he may have picked up some suspension damage before, because the car seemed to be bouncing slightly, and for Tufts in the end, it was a tow to the pit lane, and a difficult one with that. But as we return to your live pictures, it wasn't just about Daniel Tufts having difficulty on that lap, also Enzo Cantor, of course, having the difficulty, which we saw earlier, and Roddy van der Meyden as well being involved in a bit of an incident, albeit on a lap down. And in the pit lane once again for Roddy van der Meyden. And well, as our drivers come on around now, when Nathan Wade tucks in behind Jack Atkinson, he's closed up very quickly, and Wade on the offensive as Zaudi there saying, come on Nate, you can take a podium here, and he's definitely going for it as he charges Wade. Goodness me, I didn't think he was going to brake then, almost had to back, but he does and get it stopped as he comes on through, but that was absolutely brutish on the brakes. He now makes his way into high corner, and as he does, I think Wade here is pulling out all the stops, and I think he feels as though he wants to get ahead of Atkinson and try to go hunting after Miles. Well, Miles right now, the fastest man on circuit. I think Wade here will do very well to find his way past Atkinson as a minimum, but closed up very quickly indeed as we take a brief sip of water. As they make the way out of Lookblats here, it does look as though Atkinson right now under pressure. You can see a little bit of wobble there for Atkinson, coming out of the fast right-hander, and now in towards the left-hander of Schweidenkreuz as they go. And as they do, it's going to be Wade up the inside. He'll take effective P2 in this race, and for Nathan Wade now, it's all about that final charge, and can he find 5 seconds to Adam Miles and close up for the win in this race? That'll be the target, of course, because if not, Adam Miles will make it 7 wins in a row, and with the way the results have gone today, with Wade missing out on the podium in the first race, it will mean the championship will go on to the next pair of rounds in Detroit in a week's time. So Wade at the moment really trying to push on and make haste as he comes on down the hill into the compression, and Atkinson's still there with him. Meanwhile, looking up to the race leaders, this is Chris Wayne, and will Wayne there, a slow run into Odenau Forst and letting Miles go, and Wayne of course yet to take his pit stop, so as they make the way out of Odenau Forst, I think Wayne at this point just focusing on running his pace and not really being in the way of the other drivers around. Of course, it's not the right way to say it, but I think that's his mindset there in terms of he just wants to run the race and get the car home, because there's still a major opportunity here with a good number of drivers effectively. Well, he's almost a lap down, if you will. He can get himself back into contention. He did right now P2 when he comes into the pit. Presuming his pace stands, it would put him approximately what would be P8, and he comes out of the pit lane, and that would be a brilliant move. That P7 versus Enzo Cantor, so he'll be behind Cantor once he's served his pit stop. But for Chris Wayne, that will be one of his best performances of the season in this latter stage of the season thus far, as he comes down through dry effect race. Of course, he's got a long way to go on this third lap. But heading in towards the braking zone for Verstappen. Adam Miles, your leader now, and not looking to hold anything back, albeit Nathan Wade is the fastest man on circuit on this lap as they make the way through Verstappen. So Wade definitely now starting to feel the car coming to him, and has he got enough time to close down the gap to Adam Miles? With Miles being 4.4 seconds clear and up the road, well, given the relative delta in pace between the drivers, Wade would need to find a minimum of 2 seconds on this lap, and then a further 2 seconds on the next one, albeit he'll be in the tow. If he can get within the tow by the time they get to Bergwerk Corner, which is where they're coming up to on the final lap, then he will have an opportunity to go on the offensive in the downhill run all the way onto the Dottinger Hoa, so they give him plenty of time. But I don't think he's got enough time here unless he can pull out a magical lap on this lap 3 and 4 as he comes through Bergwerk. And we can see starting to drop Atkinson slightly. The gap opened up to 7 tenths. It will close back up now that Atkinson's in the tow. All the way up the hill towards the curve they go. But the key point being here is that Wade is definitely pushing the tempo. And of course, Miles, we do believe, may have to do some fuel saving on the final lap, given the fact he spent a whole second less in the pits compared to Nathan Wade. In fact, 1.5 seconds less. And well, that will translate into a fuel deficit. But as they make their way up towards what is here, the mid-curve corner, you see Atkinson still there, halving the gap, but not close enough really to look for an opportunity to strike. And Atkinson with the shortest pit stop of everybody, 8.32 seconds stationary, therefore taking the least fuel. So I think for Atkinson, he'll be very happy to just run behind Wade on this lap and pick up the tow and siphon all the fuel saving he can off of Wade to go on the offensive on the final lap as they come through the right-hand kick and head up towards Stillstrecke via Klosterol. They're heading in towards the braking zone here. Both drivers now set to go on through Stillstrecke and on towards the carousel. Chris Wayne only 1.5 seconds. They are closing on Wayne miles faster through Strecke corner. Interestingly, they're gaining 3/10 on the exit, albeit now coming back together as they make the way to braking. Wade coming on through and out, the car being bounced out there, and Atkinson just staying with him as we jump aboard with the number 26 of England. And of course, Atkinson here as he just comes up to the course of 147. And he started to analyse where Wade is the stronger driver of the two of them, and where he does gain the time, because of course on the final lap, that is where Atkinson will need to make sure he stays as close as possible as they come into the right hand of Hoek corner, and now they'll have to deal with Chris Wayne. Wayne now, of course, won't try and make the car too difficult to pass, given the fact he's yet to pit, but he will be mindful of the fact we're one of the tightest sections of the day, as Atkinson there takes a lot of curve going on through and down into Whipperman corner, and well, it does look as though Wayne just lifted off and letting it on Wade through, but there Wade being compromised as Atkinson gets very close to the run into left-hander here of Iceback corner, and now down towards Brunchen. They'll charge, but can Atkinson come back as he comes into the right-hand drop? I don't think so, as he drops the tyre off of the curb and onto the brakes here for Brunchen, just stays with Wade. Wade gets a better run off the corners. We're hitting the teeth of Young, having some slight connectivity issues, and hopefully that's not a sign of something more serious, as both drivers now come through the left-hander of Iceback and up towards Glansgarden Irons, and it's the charge downhill at this point. And again, look at Wade opening that gap up to 7/10 through the quarter sequence, but now that gap will be neutralised as they make the way over the jump and through the right into the Steffen Beloff Estate charge. Glansgarden Spy follows, and coming all the way and down. Half a second is the gap, and this is where Atkinson will continue to close. But of course, he needs to make sure to steer clear of any of those dangerous curves, because hitting one of them hard will unsettle the car, and it will all be in tears. He bounces his way on down towards the run, in towards what will be Schwalbenschwan's corner, coming up in the right-hander. But they now into Schwalbenschwan's and the left-hander on the brakes. Here they go. We can see Wade there, 4 attempts, goes a bit of speed through the corner, nicely picks up sparks flying over the rear of his car. Atkinson follows. Right now it is all about chase as Wade goes sideways out of the kind of carousel. My goodness, there the car leaping into the air practically, and Nathan Wade will say what you will right now, the man is not scared of the circuit, and I think Atkinson at that point may have been thinking he's lost it. Well, he hasn't lost it at all as they come down to the Nottingham straight. It's now a drag race on down, and this is where Atkinson will just simply look to tuck it in. He may make the jump ahead as they make the way down the first half of the straight. In fact, he is going to make the way too wide as we wait for them to come past on stationary camera. There is Adam Miles. So there's your race leader, and that's what 5.5 seconds looks like in terms of the speed they carry down the straight. Atkinson gets ahead. Wade tucks it again immediately here to try and pick up a little bit of a tow before bringing the car back out as they make the way up the hill, and as they charge their way past the parking lot and up towards the Bill Steele curve at Ridge. You can see that Atkinson tucking back in again, as now he just simply tries to stay in the tow, and this will give him all the fuel he needs to go on to the final lap and go on the offensive as they make the way onto the 4th and final lap of this race, and indeed the 7th and final lap of all racing here in Germany today. And what a day it has been at the Nürburgring. We have seen some absolutely beautiful racing, some absolutely dramatic moments, and some daring overtakes as well. And now we go on to the final lap, and I think that this battle for P2 is well and truly at the boiling point. For the white flag is out, Adam Miles leads, but it's Nathan Wade versus Jack Atkinson, as Atkinson on the outside here in the run down towards turn number 1. Miles setting a 9:56.745. It's Chris Wayne into the pit lane. We'll have to keep an eye on where he comes out of the pits from P4. But onto the brakes here, Wade defending hard. Atkinson just trying to look to go round the outside to inside. Can't quite find it through the Yokohama chicane. And now both drivers exit. Of course, they've got the whole lap to go. It is a long journey. It is 10 minutes for effectively what is 15 miles of racing. And meanwhile, as Chris Wayne being serviced in the pit lane, we're waiting to see where he will come back out. I believe it will be P7, given that Jeff Randall, his teammate for Godskipping Racing, is only halfway down the Dotting Ohio. So Chris Wayne right now will be on for a P7 finish at this rate of knots. But meanwhile, we stay with the closest battle on the circuit to the very end, as we do see right now Atkinson's still there with Wade. I think Nathan Wade does have the faster lap pace, but the problem is Atkinson has really brought himself into this one. He's been saving the fuel behind Wade in the tow as well, and they have had a little bit of a build up to this battle on the previous lap, but now this is where Atkinson could go full pelt and charge as they make their way through the Schumacher crest. And of course the GP loop is where all the natural overtakes come, and then it becomes the more daring overtakes on the remainder of the lap as we ride on board and look back to the rear of Nathan Wade's car. Into the braking zone they go, into the left-hand turn at number 10, and as they come on through there in towards 11, well, right now Wade doing everything right, albeit goes a bit deep there through the middle steep curve, but brings it back to a late apex nice and smoothly, and down towards Vidal they go, or up towards Vidal we should really say. It's the dip before the rise. Go through the kick, flat out here. Again, Atkinson very close, as we can see that the nose of the 26 are looking for a potential move, but it's not here where he's going to go for it. He's going to wait for the Nordschleife loop and then try to put one on as they make their way through the chicane and into turn 13. And this is where it all comes down now to who can stay with whom. Wade will do everything he can to break away as he really just wrangles the car through turn 13 into the speed split curve. You can see that he is pushing, he is taking those risks, he is taking little taps of the apex curves, the exit curves as well. He wants to open this gap up before they get onto the run through floodlights and up towards Nürburgring corner. He does not want Atkinson to be within a second, but Atkinson right now is saying everything you can do, I can do as well. And as they come through Hatzenbach and up towards wins the next singles and corners, Horhaken in particular, it is all going to be about smooth driving here as Wade right now absolutely wringing the neck of those tyres. And I can imagine at this point, given the fact the tyre degradation is very low on these cars in general, those tyre temperatures are going to start to fill to a degree. As we can see there, Miles making its way on through. It's a long distance shot here, but we'll eventually see Wade and Atkinson. But Atkinson within 2 tenths as they make the way towards Flugplatz curve. And as they come uphill and through the right-hander, well, they charge around. Atkinson takes a wide line, trying to get the cutback run all the way up towards will be Nürburgring corner. And this is where Atkinson can have an opportunity. Wade will put the car in the middle of the road. He'll make it as wide as possible initially before they start to reset, and as they come through the left-hand kick, now all the way they charge up towards the Schwabenschwanz corner. It's all going to be about when Atkinson decides to go, or the Schwabenkreuz corner I should really say, and as they make the way through the left-hand in towards Nürburgring, Atkinson not looking to pounce there, so now Wade's got to wonder where's it going to come then, and will it be coming to, well, of course the Dottinger is one place where we'll definitely expect it to come, but Wade now being given another opportunity to try and push a little bit more to try and open that gap up further. Atkinson just staying there. I think Atkinson maybe waiting for it all the way down the final straight. That's where he'll do it, given the fact it will come down to that last-ditch slipstream draft. As they come up through the compression into Ardenau Force, another little wobble there for Nathan Wade. The car just sliding on through, gets to stop just in time, but a slightly compromised line there on entry. That's not going to do him any favours on corner exit now, albeit keep that gap at 4 tenths, but Atkinson getting the better launch out the corner. Now heading up towards what is there, the Mets gets filled at left-hander, and more Miles just running off into the distance. And again, we stay with this battle all the way to the end, ladies and gentlemen. The rest of the field has spaced out. No more battles expected in this one. Alvar 11 drivers left. It's the battle for P2, which runs it all the way to the finish line as they come on through the left into right, go down into Kellenhard corner, and Atkinson still there as we ride on board with the number 26 driver. This is beautiful racing. This is the Nürburgring in its element here, where right now Atkinson, it may sound easy for Atkinson, but it's not. He has to follow Wade so closely here. He cannot afford a single mistake. Wade, meanwhile, with the pressure building, he is trying to break away. He knows that if he can't drop Atkinson, then it all comes down to who puts the car in the right place at the right time down the dot of the hole. But you can see that Wade just simply going sideways through that side, and Atkinson, by comparison, keeping it absolutely pinpoint precise. Two very different driving styles here. Wade literally drifting the car through the corners. Atkinson, meanwhile, just pointing at the corners, albeit there into a bridge. What is the bridge section? The opposite. Atkinson sliding on through, but now as they make their way out through with Exmuller and down towards Bergberg corner, it's all going to be now about a potential opportunity in the run up towards what will be the mud curve. And of course, will Atkinson go for it? Or again, will he just make Wade think he's not going for it? And it will all come down to that final straight. Well, if you're in Atkinson's shoes here, has he saved enough fuel? That could be the one thing that's on his mind. As you can see, that Wade does get the better exit slightly out of Bergberg, but it's all for nothing as the tow here makes all the difference to the drivers make the way up towards what is a curve. It's a long run and it takes for an eternity to get there. But once they're there, then there could be a 2 wide. But Atkinson within 2 attempts. And a little bit of an early shift there, a small upshift into 5th gear, and Atkinson right now definitely playing the fuel saving game. I wonder if Atkinson is still trying to save enough fuel to get to the end of the race, because of course he did have the shortest pit stop of everybody in terms of that stationary time, and it will put the least fuel in the car as they come into the curve here. And you can see Wade just keeping it on the racing line. He doesn't feel that Atkinson's going to put any pressure on him here as they make the way in towards the Stillstrecker shortly. A little bit of the right hand kick first as they come on through. A little bit of glide there. Wade defence on the inside initially, but then brings the car back over to the left. He used the flow of the road there to set up a defence line. Goes a bit deep. Atkinson tries to come back at it now. 3.5 tenths, 3 tenths of quarter exit, heading up towards the carousel. And will Atkinson now, I think, starting to turn the wick up slightly here. The gap is coming down to 3 tenths, albeit the carousel will cause it to space out temporarily. As we see Atkinson coming out of the carousel a little bit prematurely, albeit that doesn't matter in the long-term nature of things, as they head up towards post 147. And on through the uphill left-handers now. It's all going to be about getting a smooth run here, and that's the downhill drop. And this is the trickiest part to follow another car, because of course as you go downhill, the car naturally wants to understeer away from you given the road camber, and then you've got the dirty air in front, which is not much, but a little bit of extra understeer as an element in the car can make it even harder to get the car to point the way you want it to. But coming on through down the right to left, as we're hearing that Brody van der Meyden has had to be towed to the pits due to an incident. We won't get an opportunity to take a look back at that immediately, but it's gone wrong for van der Meyden out on the lap somewhere. Jack Atkinson coming on down here behind Wade. Wade almost losing it there, coming through the left in towards what will be Bridget corner very shortly via S-Back, and as they do, Wade showed signs of being right on the edge as he came on through. Now Bridget not claiming either driver here, but the gap between them and the leader, 7.5 seconds to Adam Miles. Miles is long gone as far as Miles is concerned. He just needs to get the car home. Meanwhile for Wade, it's all about making sure to get the car home and keep Atkinson at bay. But through Flansgarden irons they go over the jump and into the depression, and as they sweep away from the right hand, and Stefan Beloff beckons for the final time today. Wade there, just going a little bit deep, keeps the car together, but Atkinson within 3 tenths, he comes on down, and will now Atkinson all over the back as they come up towards what will be the Schwalbenschloss curve, albeit it's going to be a run, and now for Atkinson, of course, it's all about the run down the Dottinger Höhe. In return, Wade has just kept the lead position. He's never shown signs of wanting to give it up, so perhaps he's got a strategy in mind for how he's going to make it too wide through Tiergarten into Hohenrain to complete the lap, or as they make the way out in towards the Kleider Carousel here. Wade, of course, no stranger to the trickiness of this corner, but gets it absolutely spot on. And the same for Atkinson, where it's going to be Galgenkopf and then the long run, and it's going to feel like an eternity for both drivers here, and they'll both be getting their heads down in the cockpit, literally trying to reduce as much drag as possible as they come through the right hander and now onto the straight. And this is where it becomes the tactical game. Who is going to jump first? We'll wait there, a little bit of a weave initially. It's not going to be much as Atkinson tries to cover him, building up the speed here in the long charge as we look to the blimp camera, and as they make the way on down, well, Atkinson's still there. He's not going. Atkinson is going to leave this to the last moment, and this is really nasty now in the fact that Wade's probably thinking, well, when are you going to go? And Atkinson's sort of just patience, and now I think he's going to start to deploy the speed he's got as they make the way towards the Bilstein Curve Bridge, and you can see Atkinson is creeping closer and closer. It's millimetres on your screen, but as they make the way in towards the left-hander very shortly, this is where Atkinson now will start to build momentum. It could be too wide into Tiergarten, but it looks like Atkinson's just staying there. Whether he's leaving it all to last moment, he's going to leave it very late as they come on through, but meanwhile, looking from them, here's your race leader, ladies and gentlemen, and Adam Miles makes it 7 in a run, and as the dominoes fall, Adam Miles stands tall with another win in the record books to the number 85 driver, and then behind him it will be a drag race to the line between Nathan Wade and Jack Atkinson. It's all about the drive to the line, and Wade will hold on to P2. Atkinson decides to pounce right at the end, but it wasn't enough for the privateer in the 26, but P3 for Atkinson behind Wade, and it'll be Gordon Vandenbergen who finishes P4 just off the podium for Sickhead Racing, and then Titus de Jong will come on through P5, and I believe that will be one of a rare top 5 finishes for Titus de Jong this season, ahead of Enzo Cantor P6, and then we do have a 30-second gap to Chris Wayne, but as Wayne makes his way on through at Tiergarten into Hohenrain very shortly right now, and just bringing it on through the corners, and the God-skipping racing driver, a little bit of understeer creeping in there, but he's going to hold on to make it his best performance of the season, ladies and gentlemen. And the God-skipping racing driver in the number 13 car will come on home P7 here in the feature at the Nürburgring, and I think the team are going to be absolutely proud of his performance. And then we do have a 30-second gap to Jeff Randall in P8 currently as he's making his way down the final part of the Dottinger Höhe straight. But here is Randall right now, and the God-skipping racing driver coming to the end of his long run, and that early instant on lap number 1 cost him extremely dear, as he comes out of the final corner here, and knowing what could have been today is in tatters, but still brings the car home in P8 and will not quite able to make it a double podium. He'll have to settle for one in the number 107 as he decides to spin it across the line there, and I think just let it off some of the steam, and then it will be Neil Gardner who, after that early instant, of course, in the run out of Flugplatz corner with Ryan Jackson, well, for the New Zealander, it has not been his day to remember, with the retirement from race 1 as well, when the pace was looking so strong for the 74. It's just not been given the opportunity to shine. But as he crossed the line there, P9, we do have approximately a minute before Daniel Tufts makes it to the timeline. And with that, we do have the opportunity to take a quick look back at what happened to Roddy van der Meijden, which saw him have to retire from the race. Well, first off, it was a bounce there over the curve at what was Vidal, and well, that set the car off. And Van der Meijden at that point trying to get the car back and pointed in the right direction. And a little bit later on, Van der Meijden, we take a look further on in lap, and this was coming in to drive at Rex. And as he did, we're coming down for the Spiel curve, the car cutting loose over the apex curve there, and in the end, a nasty knock to the wall, and that was Van der Meijden's race in tears. But meanwhile, Daniel Tufts still making his way on down the Dottinger straight, and as he does, folks, well, whether he's come home as the winner or P10, every driver's made it to the checker flag today has been an absolute star. I think you'll agree with me. And as Tufts comes on through the final couple of corners, the right into left here, he'll head to the line at P10, and with the number 34 driver, no, it's not where he thought he'd be today, but still he'll be in the points, and he'll take those in to the next round in Detroit in a week's time. But P10 for Daniel Tufts, he completes the finishing order, and with that completes our racing here today in Germany. And so, with round number 80's race complete, let's take a look at the race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries. Well, after 4 laps of racing, standing in approximately 40 minutes of racing in the end, Adam Miles brought home another win to make it 2 wins out of 2 here in Germany, and with it 7 wins in a row. The streak continues for Adam Miles, and I believe he is setting a series record in terms of back-to-back wins. 8.7 seconds clear of Nathan Wade, who battled hard with Jack Atkinson all the way through the final couple of laps, and in the end, Wade just done with Atkinson to the finish line, a 10th between them, if that, with Atkinson P3, enjoying the racing on his return, and it does seem as though he's really enjoyed the Nürburgring. And then Gordon Vandenberg at P4 for Sighead Racing, not quite able to make it onto the podium, but still the number 50 driver enjoying the run, and another top 5 finish to add to his accolades. 6 seconds clear of Titus de Jong for RT Racing, and a season best performance for Titus de Jong, we can confirm, for RT Racing, finishing P5 ahead of Enzo Cantor P6, the SRC Movano Racing driver, missing out in the late stages today, but still a top 10 finish, and he'll be happy with that. Jeff Randall, P7 there, and I think for Chris Wayne, well, something's gone wrong there for Chris Wayne, because it was Wayne ahead of Randall, but it seems as though the results have been inverted there. Not quite sure how that's happened, but in the end, Jeff Randall, P7 for Gonskipin Racing, and his teammate Chris Wayne classified as being P8. I think there might have been a post-race penalty applied, and then Neil Garner, P9 there, ahead of Daniel Tuss to complete your top 10, and the finishers on the lead lap was Roddy van der Meijden, P11 there, retiring 1 lap from the finish for Team STN. And then we had the 2 privateers retire on the opening lap of Ryan Jackson and Sebastian Holmichael. My goodness me, what a pair of races we've had today, ladies and gentlemen. And indeed, the racing may be complete, but we're not complete in terms of this broadcast, because, of course, coming up shortly will be the post-round interviews with our volunteer drivers. Indeed, it'll be interesting to hear their perspective on what have been 2 races that have been right on the knuckle, racing action from start to finish. And we'll be back in approximately 10 to 15 minutes for the interviews. Don't go anywhere, you won't to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to have our post-round interviews with our selected volunteer drivers, and today we have 3 drivers up for interview. We'll be firstly hearing from SRC Movano Racing's Enzo Cantor in the 77, who bounced back today after what was a difficult time at Montreal last time out, with a brilliant qualifying lap to put on the second row of the grid, a second place in the sprint race with Nip and Tuck battling all the way through, and now P6 in the feature race, which didn't quite come to him in terms of the race, but still kept his head down and pushed on. We'll then be hearing from Adam Miles, our double winner, indeed our 7-time winner now in a row, and we'll hear his perspective from the lead of the race, indeed with that pole lap in qualifying. And then we'll be hearing from Jeff Randall for Skipping Racing, who had a middling qualifying session, a great sprint race, but it all fell apart when it looked so strong at the start of the feature race, and to hear his perspective on what has been a day of mixed results. But as we get ready to kick off then with Enzo Cantor, well, he does now join me in the interview room. Good evening to you, Enzo, and welcome to you. What a day it has been in Germany.
Hi. Well, I'm not so happy. I'm not so happy.
Oh no, why is that? Because you were able to pick up a P2 in the sprint. It was a great performance there, but the feature race, I suspect, it didn't quite go to plan.
First of all, let me say one thing. Adam is the best here, and I knew it before the race, and he confirmed that he has the fastest pace here. Perhaps my pace is not so slower than him. I think I can be able to stay with him with the draft. Talking about the first race, we lost so much time in the first corners. Unfortunately, I connected my PC too late, and I had only 1 lap to qualifying, so I was not in front, and we lost the pace in the first corners, and bye Adam. So I tried to push so hard every corner, but I was able to gain only a few tenths, and in the last one it was useless to continue to push. In the second one, I knew that Ada was following me. I had to be patient because in front of me there were people that should commit mistakes in the first corners with the cold tires. But I had to be patient because there was no one in front able to push hard and go away. So I repeated to myself, be patient, be patient, be patient, be patient. And I think I was able to do it. I survived after a little risks in some corners, but I was very, very focused. And in the second lap, I was third. And I was managing because the car in front of me were too slow in order to try to help each other using the draft. So my plan was to pass them, starting the lap, pushing so hard, and push them out of my draft after the first half of the lap. And I was my plan was almost successful, because before I died, before that corner, I was 1 second away, so I needed only one more very fast corner in order to push them out of my draft. And but as you can see, I took it a little bit fast. I initially survived because I initially kept the curb, and I avoid the death. So I thought, wow, I'm surviving. But after that, I did an idiot mistake, because after the curb there is the grass, and everyone knows that you have to leave throttle over the grass. I didn't do that, and I died over the wall. So what I have to say, I'm not happy.
Oh, I do feel for you, but at the same time, given the fact you came into qualifying late and to immediately put the car P4 on the grid was testament to your immediate skill. And I have to ask, is this a circuit that you enjoy, the Nürburgring?
This is one of the circuit I like more than one else. because this is unique. This is you hate him or you love it. You hate it or you love it, and I love it. Well, surely I'm not the fastest on the planet, but I think I can keep a very fast pace, and I can battle for the victory in every ice-off split. Today I was wishing in a double podium, perhaps a double second place, but well, another time I missed it.
Oh, indeed, it is unfortunate, but still glad that you enjoy it, the circuit for its unique nature. And I have to ask, when you're racing around here, particularly in the first race, we saw so many moments where it was too wide at certain parts, such as the run up towards Mutterkurve corner. How do you manage those too wide moments? Because in any other car, it's single file.
Yes, yes, yes. But you know, no, this car is famous to be 2 or 3 wides everywhere. No, well, this is a track in which, in the past, I thought you have to do it in single file with the Skippy 2, but racing here many times, I learned that you can be too wide side by side in many parts of the track, and you can attack in many parts of the track where people think that is almost impossible. But the problem is when you can do that, because you have to risk, because in many times the other driver is not able to manage the side-by-side corner in this kind of track. So he can do a mistake, kill himself, and kill you with himself. So you have to understand very well which are the drivers in front of you. You have to study very well their moves, and you have to wait and to understand where you can try to attack in order to make him a little bit I don't know how to say. You have to force him to leave the throttle. No, you have to seem very sure, very strong, and you have to seem that you know very well what you are doing. So the other driver can leave the throttle. In other way, you only risk to die. But well, if you want to don't lose gap, you have to risk. I risked today, but it was not enough.
It may not have been enough, particularly in the second race of the day, to make it a double podium, but we saw in the sprint race some brilliant battling from yourself, particularly on the closing lap, where we saw you take P2 in the battle with Neil Gardner and also Ryan Jackson, making the move around the outside in the run-up towards Orenburg corner. And well, that's one place where being on the outside is the ultimate risk.
Well, this is here. The risks are everywhere, outside, inside. It's almost the same. But well, here the draft is very important. And also, you have really, if you are faster than some other drivers, if you want to push them out of the draft and think to finish the race alone without trying to kill each other in the last straight, well, the only way is to go in front, take some risk, go in front and push so hard in order to push them out of the draft. And again, if you push a little bit too hard, you can die yourself. But it's the only way, and it's what I did in the first race. I was trying to do again in the second, but again, I missed it.
But it was unfortunate in the second race, but still, you kept your head down to push on for P6. And I have to ask, when you're lapping around here by yourself, is there a particular part of the circuit you enjoy the most?
I enjoy all the parts with the corners. The only parts, because are the parts in which I can see that the gap is reducing with other drivers. In the straights, the gap remains the same, and so I hate the straights.
Well, indeed, different from most, but I like it. And of course, with the results you've been able to achieve today, you've now moved up to P10 in the championship. 191 points, 6 rounds remaining, and well, the opportunity for you to finish inside the top 5 is still on. How are you feeling for Detroit next week?
Detroit, I really don't remember at all the track, so it will be a surprise. I don't know. I really don't know what I will do the next time. So I had big chances here, and I missed them. I did the same last week. So, well, in Italy, we said it's not Christmas every day. I don't know in English, but I had two Christmas. I didn't take the presents, so I don't know what will happen the next week.
Well, you never know. It could work out for you in Detroit. It could be the aforementioned Christmas. We look forward to seeing whether it comes true. But just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give it a shout out or a mention to live on the broadcast this evening?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. As always, I have to say thanks to my team, SRC Mivano Racing, my team manager Fabio Mantellini, all my teammates, and all the drivers in the skip series because, well, I respect them, and most of them are my friends, and I wish this series will not die after this season because I think this is a unique car, and I think it's is very different from Formula Ford, and I think this car, iRacing needs this car. And after all, I say thanks to you as always because again I have to say congratulations to you because looking at the broadcast, it's incredible how many words do you say during all the broadcasts without any pause. So, well, really incredible.
Oh, thank you, Enzo. But the same goes to yourself. Some absolutely incredible driving, particularly in the sprint today. It's always a pleasure to have you in the interview room. Congratulations on your performances, and we look forward to seeing you in a week's time in America.
Thank you, thank you. See ya, and sorry for my English.
It's not a problem. You have a lovely evening.
You too, thank you.
So hearing there from Enzo Cantor, always a lovely chap to talk to, and well, I'd definitely say he doesn't need to apologise for his English. He may be native Italian, but I think he does very well with his English spoken language as well, and what a different set of performances today. We thought he would be quite happy after his performances at Montreal in terms of that contrast and uptake in results, but instead, in his own words, they're talking about the fact that it really was a golden opportunity today, a circuit he enjoys racing at, given the variety of corners and the fact there's only a couple of extended straight sequences, but he can focus very much on those corners and feel as though he had the pace today to go hunting after Adam Miles. But joining qualifying late when he only could get one lap on the board, that put in P4, and to be fair, to put in a P4 lap with only one lap on the tyres that had just got up to temperature, that is an absolutely brilliant lap in itself. But of course, by the time he cleared the fighting and it was too late, he couldn't close up to Miles, and that meant the win went away in the sprint. And in the feature race, where it started off strong, as we've seen in the pictures, battling his way up towards the leaders early on, but then it all unfolded in difficulty midway through the feature race, and in the end had to settle for a P6 after a mid-race incident. And well, for the SLC Movano racing driver, of course, now a major opportunity has not been seized upon, and going into next week's rounds with the fact he doesn't really know the Belle Isle circuit in downtown Detroit, and well, if he's able to master it quickly, you never know, he could find that is the one opportunity that he never expected to come his way. But we'll have to wait to see what happens on that day. But that concludes our first interview, ladies and gentlemen, and now we get ready to speak to our next interviewee, and it will be Adam Miles, our double winner once again, and we'll be hearing from him his perspective out front and how he's been able to manage what has been now a streak of 7 wins back-to-back, and what a phenomenal pair of performances today. In fact, he never put a foot wrong. But as he gets ready to join me in the interview room, in fact, he does join me now. Good evening to you, Adam. And well, firstly, allow me to say congratulations on extending the record in the series further. Now, 7 wins in a row. They seem to fall like dominoes, the wins. You must be a Nürburgring expert at this rate, given the pace you had today.
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Paul. I've always loved the Nordschleife, and it's dating back to Grand Prix Legends, the version there. So I know the track very well. You turn up and it might have 170 corners, but I know every one of them. So very much enjoy this track, and it rewards precision. So qualifying in the official races was brilliant. I've had some really bad luck outside of this series this week. I blew an engine in one and got killed in another, so I'm really happy to have 2 solid races in the trophy series.
Oh, indeed, and what a way to start off in qualifying in particular, taking pole by 2.7 seconds, which if we brought it back down to a much smaller lap in itself would be somewhere in the region of at least half a second, if not to 6 to 7 tenths on average compared to the rest of the field. And it looked as though that pole lap was a practically perfect lap, a 9:54.263.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot left on the table with that one. There was one mistake, I think, at mini carousel. I possibly lost 2 tenths there, but really the rest of the lap was pretty nailed on. So I gave it another go once I'd set that lap, reset, did an out lap, but I knew there wasn't going to be a quicker lap coming. So you really had to make the best use of the 3rd lap on the available fuel, and so finished that lap and then basically knew that was it. So yeah, very happy with the lap, and the first lap out as well. I think it was a 9:56, something like that. Was better than I was expecting. The conditions were really good.
Oh, indeed, and carrying that forward into the sprint race, of course, we saw you start from pole, and whilst it looked close in the run to turn number 1, you were very quickly given the opportunity to hold the lead and break away. Of course, turn 1, a very tricky one. Was there anything in particular you had planned for that hairpin?
Not really. I mean, again, I've done a handful of races this week, so you obviously have a different braking point for turn 1 when you're coming off of the standing start. So I knew roughly where I needed to brake. It was just important not to run wide or to drop it. But yeah, didn't feel like I came under too much pressure, although maybe I just wasn't looking in my mirrors at the time. But yeah, I was happy to get out of turn 1 with about a half-second lead.
Indeed, and from that point onwards, it looked as though the field was trying to stay with you, but nobody could quite match you on pace, or those who potentially could. And we did see signs of that from Nathan Wade in race 2, and we did see towards the end of the first race, Enzo Cantor starting to build a bit of momentum. They just didn't seem to get enough time on the circuit to be able to hunt you. But in all that time, you were gradually breaking away. I have to ask, did you at any point look at the sort of gap gauge and go, okay, it's now 6 seconds, then 7 seconds, or did you just sort of, I'm just going to enjoy the drive and not look behind me?
I mean, I keep an eye on the relative all the time, swap around efficiently. So I was just trying to make sure that they weren't doing that and they weren't making ground, and it didn't look like they were. And then I think whoever Enzo, oh yeah, of course, Neil got his disconnection, so he didn't have a partner to work with after that. So yeah, Enzo had really good pace actually in the first race. So the gap went from about 3.6 kind of ish at the end of lap 1 to about 5 at the end. So he was within 5 or 6 tenths actually of my pace, although you know, I knew I had the gap, so I wasn't trying to do qualifying laps in the race 1, so I had a little bit in hand, but yeah, he had really good pace.
Well, carrying that pace forward, indeed, the chase of the rest of the field into race number 2, starting P10. Bit of fuel saving required potentially if you decide to go for it, and we of course know from speaking to you previously that fuel less of a concern compared to other drivers. It looks as though you had a very gradual start and started to cut your way through the field.
Yeah, mission priority number 1 was just don't die on the first lap. It was a long race. It's difficult to overtake. The draft's very strong, so I had a fair idea that the leaders were not gonna be able to pull away, and even if they did, as long as I was alive and had a car with 4 wheels attached, I might be able to drag them back in. So yeah, didn't make any silly moves. I think I started 10th and I was running P10 when Ryan Jackson had his off at the top of Flugplatz. I think I was 1 car behind him, and he went off into the grass, into the barrier, and it looked like he'd got it under control. He sort of holding it on the left-hand side of the track in the grass, and then suddenly the car just speared back onto the track. Had a moment to decide which side I was going, picked the right, and he just caught the back of my car, sort of broke the rear left suspension a little bit, had some broken steering, and that's where this sort of 3 or 4 second gap opened up, and I just at that point I knew I wanted to pit at the end of that lap to get the fast repair, because the car was just not as good as it could have been after that incident. But to be honest, I was just thankful that I wasn't dead, because I had to put a big moment of opposite lock in there just to keep the car on the road after I got hit. So yeah, that was almost the end of the streak right there. Another inch either way, and I would have been dead.
We did see the contact, and thank you for clarifying with regards to that potential suspension damage and what it had for the rest of that open lap. But a smart dive into the pits, a relatively short stop as well, one of the shortest stops in terms of all of our drives, spanning in at only 8.78 seconds stationary time. And then you went back out there with quite a bit of space to the likes of Nathan Wade and company, who had pitted at the same time as you.
Yeah, I haven't spoken to Nathan or to Daniel to see what happened. I mean, I thought it was a fairly straightforward sort of fuel strategy. It was just over a gallon a lap. We pitted at the end of lap 1, so therefore I thought I need just over 3 gallons, and so I didn't push it. I came out with about 3.2 gallons, and only needing about 3, so I didn't underfuel. I was confused, to be honest. I didn't know why they were in the pits 3 or 4 seconds longer than me, because I didn't really get the opportunity to fuel save either on that lap, because I ended up 3 or 4 seconds behind after that incident. I had to push to just get back to the front group by the end of the lap. So yeah, I'd have to speak to them and see why they're in the pits so long. But my stop just felt normal.
Indeed, a relatively normal stop then, which saw you gradually retake the lead of the race as others pitted, and from that point onwards, it looked as though you were fully in control of the race all the way to the checkered flag. And I have to ask, as you're tearing it around there, is there a particular section of corners or a sequence which is your favourite at the Nürburgring?
Oh, I'm going to do a Jeff here and tell you that there is, but not be able to describe it. You've come out of the carousel, you've gone up the hill, and then you essentially start the descent. There's a big right hander at the top of the hill, and then there's a very fast right, left, right. You're mounting the curb as much as you can. It's just you're right on the edge. You're trying to take as much curb as you can, but take too much curb and it'll just spit you into the wall. So it's maximum attack through there, and I love going through there every lap.
Well, indeed, that would be the run from Hoek through to Hedwig's Hohe and into Wipperman, the downhill descent. One that's a favourite of many, I must admit, I enjoy it as well. And it did look as though you're in full control, charging down the hill as much as you were up the hill. And of course now, with 2 more wins in the bank, it does mean that you continue to run at P2 in the championship, albeit with that gap to Nathan Wade. Now coming down slightly to just shy of 150 points. 6 rounds to go, and next week it's a visit to Detroit. How are you feeling for the Belle Isle circuit?
Yeah, I do love a good street circuit. My favourite is Chicago, so I'm disappointed we're not going there. But Belle Isle, it's a great track, and the walls are right there. If you step out of line, the suspension will not take a lot of punishment. So yeah, turn 1 and 2, especially at Belle Isle, you're almost flat through those 2 corners, and then you carry the speed down the straight. So really looking forward to it.
Well, Adam, we look forward to seeing how you get on in a week's time in Detroit. But just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
As always, of course, yourself. I never fail to watch it back, and you've got a voice for it and a knack for it as well. It's fantastic to watch it back, and you can hear the enthusiasm coming through in your voice. So I'll be eating a late dinner tonight, watching it, and so thank you very much for everything you do.
Well, it's my pleasure, Adam, and likewise, thank you for joining me in the interview room. Congratulations once again on continuing the streak of wins, now 7 in a row. Can you make it 9 in a week's time? We'll have to wait and find out then, but until then, have a fantastic evening, and thank you once again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All the best. So hearing there from Adam Miles, the privateer who made it 2 out of 2 to make it 7 wins on the bounce. And well, what a day it has been today. Talking about the circuit and indeed qualifying, a major fan of the Nürburgring circuit, having practiced it and played around on it in the early days of simulators all the way back to Grand Prix Legends. And we're on the iRacing platform, continuing that experience and showing it in a ripe measure with the Skippy as he charged on around, taking pole early on in the qualifying session and practically perfecting the lap on the final qualifying lap available to him. It looked like there was nothing he could not do in qualifying to perfect the lap. Indeed, only 2 attempts of being dropped, if that, which is marginal in the wider consideration of the 170 plus corners. In the sprint race, after a strong start into turn at number 1, based on the experience of the official races, able to run off into the distance. And in the feature race, a very close and near miss coming out of Floodplatz with Ryan Jackson getting it wrong and coming back onto the circuit in a car that was wayward. And in the end, Adam Miles picking up a bit of damage, which caused suspension damage. And that explains why we saw him come into the pits early with a bit of a gap to the likes of Daniel Tuffs and Nathan Wade. But after taking the fast repair, a bit perplexed by the fact he was able to come back out ahead, given the fact he timed the stop to perfection. But at the same time, able to run away with clear air and an open circuit, and then not look back when he retook the lead on strategy and then ran off into the distance to make it both wins today. Indeed, right now in the driving seat, of course, the gap between himself and Nathan Wade continues to come on down, but it would require Nathan Wade to have multiple retirements from this point onwards for Miles to effectively be able to become champion. But you never know what can happen in racing, and indeed, Miles will believe in that all the way to the final checker flag. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, that's our second interview of the day. You've just heard from Adam Miles, and very shortly we're going to be hearing from our final interview of the day, and that is Jeff Randall, as we get ready to hear his perspective on what has been a mixed day of results after a brilliant sprint turning into a difficult end in the feature race. As he does get ready to join me now, we'll also hear his perspective on qualifying. And in fact, we do have the man himself now joining me in the interview room. Good evening to you once again, Jeff. And well, how another race can completely spin the racing on its head. After a great sprint, a difficult feature from the lead, you must be partially gutted.
Yeah, I think that's a fair call. It was an amazing start to the race, really. I mean, I was started in 8th. And then had that move from 5th to 1st, going up towards the right-hand hairpin before the carousel, and thought, okay, well that's nice. And then started breaking away. I thought, okay, well that's good. And then thought I need to go and inspect a barrier, make sure it's nice and solid. And it was actually very solid. It broke my skippy really well.
Oh, goodness me. Well, before we come into that in a little bit more detail, let's take it all the way back to the beginning. Qualifying, P7 on the grid, a lot of drivers really battling to try and get into the 9-minute, the sub 10-minute lap, and you found yourself right on the periphery all the way through the qualifying session. Was it that you just couldn't quite find the time, or how did the qualifying go for yourself?
Yeah, it was a little bit of good and a little bit of bad. I mean, the bad were the times that I actually got, and the good was the one lap which I didn't get, which was just one off track right at the very end. I was on for a 9:58 or something, and got one off track right at the end. But the other 2 laps were, sort of average at best, really. But kept me on the track. That's good enough.
Indeed, good enough laps there to make sure you qualify in the midfield, not pushing it too hard, and then going into the sprint race. Of course, we briefly caught up with you between the 2 races, and you were absolutely pleased with the P3. But from the outset, it really looked as though you enjoyed that being right there in the middle of the pack and battling hard with drives from start to finish. It looked to be a classic Skippy racing for a classic gentleman in the Skippy.
I like that term, the classic gentleman. Yes, no doubt. It was typical sort of Nords and just jostling for position. But by the end of the race, I was pretty much on my own in the sprint race. I knew that Nathan was behind me and had damage, and he was trying to work with Daniel. But that was because Nathan's damage was just slowing him down so much. They never really had a chance of catching. So I just sat on my own in 3rd for the last 2 laps, and that was okay. I'll always take a 3rd. Unlucky for Neil to drop out.
Well, indeed, it was unlucky for him, but of course, when one falls, others rise, and in particular, you rose to the podium. And then, of course, coming into the feature race, it would see you start in P8 on the grid, and for the start of the race, it did look as though everybody really had a bit of a nip and tuck battle, and we had an absolutely crazy 2x2x2 run up through Mut Curve, or the run up towards the carousel, and you found yourself right in the thick of it. I mean, you must have been speechless, the fact that everybody survived that.
Well, I mean, from where I was sat, it actually looked pretty safe. It was just a bit bizarre because the front 4 cars were all line astern, and then I got side draft and was carrying an incredible speed through there. So I just went past 4th, went past 3rd, went past 2nd, went past 1st, and looked at my rearview mirror and thought, okay, now this could be entertaining, because I saw exactly what you were describing, 2x2 behind me. But yeah, no, just a testament to all the drivers really, as to how good they are, and trying not to make any contact. Yeah, it was impressive stuff.
Oh, most definitely. And then, of course, the run down the mountain, which saw you take the lead of the race, but then, of course, the difficulties coming down the hill and a bit of a whack to the wall.
Yes, a whack to the wall preceded by a whack to the curb, which just completely threw the car. I must admit, at the start of the race, or at the start of this session, I lowered the car quite dramatically because I'd been running it quite high for the officials. But for this race, I thought I'm going to lower it, and I had been riding that curb, and it's the first time I actually clipped that curb with the new setting, and well, the rest, as they say, is history, and is visible on the video, sadly.
Indeed, it was very unfortunate, and I must admit, my heart sank a little bit because I was hoping to see you battling for the podium all the way to the finish, if not the win. But still, you recovered from the incident, had the fast repair, and went back out there to come home P8 in the race. And of course, heading on around in a bit of a lonely circuit from that point onwards. What pushes you forward to keep on going? Is it just the thrill of the Nürburgring, or is it the chase of the car in front?
It's a bit of both, and by that time, to be honest, I was pretty much on autopilot and feeling a bit knackered. It's been one of those long days today, so I was just conscious that Neil was started off about 26 seconds behind me and finished the race about 16 seconds behind me, and I thought, okay, don't make too many mistakes and just hold on to 8th. But yeah, you just keep pushing and just want to get across the line as high up as you can. But once that sort of mistake has happened, you know that you're just fighting for the minor positions. And yeah, it's all good. I don't mind. It's just irritating that I've binned it from the lead.
Oh, indeed, I can appreciate how you feel, but still, with the 48 points you've gained from today, that means now you're well in the hunt for P3 versus Steffen Herrmann. The gap between the two of you standing at 40 points and 6 rounds to go. Speaking of 6 rounds to go, 2 of them next week at Detroit. How are you feeling for the street circuit?
Yeah, I love Detroit. I think it benefits some of the quicker drivers because there's not so much slipstream around there. So I think Adam and Nathan are going to be super fast around there. Adam is a bit of an expert on the street circuit, so it'll be an interesting one to see. And I think as long as we can all keep it out the walls, then it should be good fun.
We do look forward to seeing how you get on in the streets of Detroit in a week's time. But just before we do let you go, Jeff, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to this evening on the broadcast?
To all the drivers once again for making this a possible thing and turning up and driving, and to you for doing what you do. The behind the scenes work, I know, is pretty intense. So thank you so much for what you do, Paul.
It's my pleasure, Jeff, and likewise I just want to say a big thank you to you for hosting an absolutely brilliant series as we continue to make our way towards the end. I think everybody tuning in will agree with me. This series has been an absolute thriller from start to finish. This 2023 Skip Barber Challenge Trophy continues to impress, and I cannot wait to see what is held within the final 6 rounds.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Paul.
With that, you have a great evening, and we'll catch you circuit side in a week's time.
See you there. Cheers now.
So hearing there from Jeff Randall from Gone Skipping Racing, and well, what a day it has been for him in terms of the qualifying session, which was get a lap on the board and get a good timer with it, and then turn it around into what was the race session, the sprint race, where it was a P3 finish, albeit inheriting the P3 after we saw the retirement of Neil Gardner. But at the same time, what we also saw in there was the rise of Jeff Randall's pace and also his consistency to be attacking for P4 and then being in the right place at the right time to take that final podium spot. However, the feature race, a blazing start, so we move up into the lead come the first 2/3 of the lap complete. Only then in the downhill run for Stefan Belofes for it to all go wrong in the charge down the hill and contact to the barrier, and then subsequently to one of the race curves, which completely destroyed the front suspension of the car and meant that he had to be towed to the pits. But still, As we see in the pictures here, Jeff did not stop at any point from carrying on and made sure to bring the car home in P8 and get key points, and that battle for P3 in the championship is well alive, albeit he's the attacker 40 points down, but you can imagine out in the chase after Steffen Herrmann, he'll still go all in with 6 rounds remaining and plenty of points still available. And can Jeff Randall find a way to get himself into the top 3 come the very end of the season? Well, we'll have to wait and find out, but with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our interviews for today, and you've just heard from Jeff Randall from Gone Skipping Racing in the 107. You've previously also heard from double race winner and pole sitter Adam Miles in the 85, the privateer driver. And then our first interview of the day was Enzo Cantor for SRC Movano Racing, the 77 driver there, who in the end put together a mixed set of performances, but indeed bringing on home a spot on the podium, and that will please him in the long term, I'm sure of it. But thank you to all 3 of our drivers for being available to interview, and congratulations to all 3 of them for their performances here today at the Nürburgring. But with that, of course, it is now time to wrap up. And well, before we do wrap up, we just want to say hi in the chat there to a couple more of you who we have noticed over the course of the interviews, including Rodino Meerdem and also Darcy Trafalgar, who enjoyed that tense battle for P2. Indeed, a number of you enjoyed that battle for P2. And well, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you all here, but it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and you want to know more about the Skip Barber Challenge Trophy, why not check us out on our official Discord, invite link available on screen. Indeed, if you're sat there right now thinking that you enjoy the Skip Barber Formula 2000 car, or perhaps you recently bought it on the iRacing service and would like some tips from the very best drivers in the machine in terms of how to get the most out of it, and perhaps you want to practice with them, alternatively be on the grid for the final couple of rounds of the season, well, do join the Discord there, because we're an open and a friendly community, and we always welcome more drivers who want to keep the Skippy alive alongside this series. But if you don't want to join our Discord necessarily, we can always stay tuned in for future broadcasts. Indeed, we've still got 3 more to go and plenty more racing expected. We'd also like to take a brief moment to give a big thank you to our sponsors for this series, Musical Money, their web address www.musical-money.co.uk, and Musical Money being the quick, easy and safe way to turn your musical equipment into money. And if that sounds like the tune to you, then do go to the website musical-money.co.uk. But of course now, ladies and gentlemen, our drivers will be making their way back to the United States of America, which is where we'll stay for the final 6 rounds of the season. And we start off with the first of 3 host venues, which will be in the state of Michigan, and it's the city of Detroit for the Belle Isle Grand Prix circuit. It's rounds 19 and 20, and they'll transpire on Friday the 19th of May 2023, and the art of the craft here will be to keep it out of the wall, and who'll be able to do so and come away standing tall. We'll find out all that and more then. But until then, we have been Gone Skipping Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, have an awesome weekend ahead, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.